Thank you, Connie. Good. So just before we begin the second order of on our agenda, the Canadian Anthem and the land acknowledgement, I just wanted to acknowledge and we're going to take a moment of silence for 450 Tactical Helicopter Squadron. We have many members of the military and veterans who reside here in Whitewater region, and that community lost two of their own in these past few days in a terrible training accident on the Ottawa River. So, Council, just before we do the Canadian Anthem, we'll just pause for a moment of silence and then step into the National Anthem. Good? Good? All right, so if everybody could please rise and face the flag. And we'll just take a moment of silence, please. Perfect. Please grab a seat. As we gather, we would also like to acknowledge on behalf of Council and our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history, and we are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Next item on our agenda is just the adoption of the agenda. So the recommendation before us is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the June 21st, 2023 agenda. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Tabbert, seconded by Councillor Moore. Any amendments or changes that anybody would like to propose? So none seen. All those in favor? And it's carried. Next item is the adoption of minutes. First one is regular and closed session minutes of June 7th, 2023, as well as a report to Council dated May 31st, 2023. And the recommendation is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the regular minutes, June 7th, 2023 minutes, and the closed session minutes of June 7th, 2023, understanding that they remain confidential. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Trim. Just one comment I'll make before we vote on this is I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that the report from the Integrity Commissioner that is attached to these minutes, May 31st, 2023, of our last council meeting. At the request of a resident, there was a member of council who was investigated by our Integrity Commissioner to confirm if there was a breach of our code of conduct. The investigation has confirmed that there was absolutely no breach of our code of conduct by Councillor Tabbert. Is there any other comments? Errors or omissions in those minutes? None? We'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Good. Next item is disclosures of interest. Is there any disclosures on any of the items tonight? And Councillor Bell?
I just have to disclose on 10.5 due to conflict because of relations.
Perfect. There's a form that the clerk will ask you to fill out. and we'll just make sure that you step out of the room for that item. Good, and no other disclosures of interest are seen. Good, now on to our next item. Presentations. So we have the honor tonight to do a few presentations. Sorry.
Did you miss,
Oh, thank you. I missed one item. So we're just going to revert back. I'll just note, we don't have a resolution or a motion on it. The acknowledgement that under our committees and boards, we have Committee of Adjustment minutes from 27 April 2023 that are included in the package. Good. Good, so presentations. We get to acknowledge tonight some of our youth, outstanding youth in our community. And I believe there are, if I'm looking for my list, there are 6 youth bursaries that we are awarding tonight. And I'll just list the 6 names and then we're going to go into a formal presentation. But Ayla Lamy from Jean Lajoie, Nico Termarsh from Fellows, Samantha Hayat, got that right, I hope, Opiongo, Marielle from St. Joe's, Nolan from Bishop, and Haley from RCI. So what we're going to do is we'll just one at a time. The Deputy Mayor is going to call you forward. We're going to stand in front of this background and we'll read out a little paragraph on you one by one and get some pictures with Mom and Dad. Good?
Okay, so first we have Ayla Lamy, please. Sorry? Ayla, I apologize. Ayla? Very first, the top one. So, Ayla? Oh.
She's the first one.
Ayla has been a summer camp volunteer, a Borka volunteer, and has volunteered sandbagging to help flood victims. Ayla has been part of Student Council and the Athletic Committee at Jean Lajoie since 2020. She was a member of the Jean Lajoie volleyball, soccer, and track and field teams, as well as participating in minor hockey and minor soccer. In her free time, Ayla enjoys reading, doing yoga, playing piano, and singing. She will study communications at Carleton University. We are pleased to present Ayla this bursary.
You can come right up, Mom, if you want. Good. We want one picture of Mom and Dad?
Next, we have Nicholas Termarsh, please. Nicholas has been a young athlete since the age of 8. His chosen sport being basketball. Nicholas has been playing AAA basketball in Ottawa for the past 6 years, which has led him to be an integral part of the Fellows Falcons championship winning teams. Nicholas has participated in bottle drives and helped with local yard sales in his community. He enjoys welding, both for art as well as assisting in various projects. Nicholas pursued an education in commerce, and we are pleased to present Nicholas this bursary.
Do you want to come in for a photo?
Great. Next, we have Samantha Hyatt. Samantha participates in multiple school sports, including hockey, cross-country, track and field, and rugby. She has received the Wildcat Award on multiple occasions, which is an award in recognition of tenacity, spirit, and an effort as voted upon by the coaches at Opeongo High School. During the pandemic, Samantha fundraised in order to keep her local rink operating. She has organized activity days and right-to-play events. In addition to her roles as co-president of Opeongo's Athletic Association, Samantha is also a link crew leader at Opeongo High School, helping incoming students to navigate their transition to high school. She will pursue a degree in chemical engineering at McGill University. We are pleased to present Samantha with this bursary. Thank you. Yep, one more. And we also have Mariel Enright with us this evening, too. Mariel has served as a sports minister, volunteered to help with scorekeeping, as well as participating in a number of sports, including basketball, volleyball, soccer, badminton, and track and field. Mariel is present in her community by way of the St. Michael's Parish, the St. Joseph's High School Student Orientation Leadership Program, and the Douglas and area music scene. Mariel will pursue a university education. Congratulations.
Are we yet coming up now?
That's it. There's just two more. So we do have two more participants that unfortunately aren't with us this evening. First, we have Nolan Costello from Bishop Smith High School. Nolan has represented both his school athletics program as well as community teams. His accomplishments include a gold medal from the Ontario Native Basketball Invitational, most valuable player on the Bishop Smith soccer team, as well as multiple Ontario Games appearances for various sports. Nolan has been a volunteer for facility maintenance, umpiring, and selling tickets. He has received an academic honor roll recognition for all 5 of his years at Bishop Smith and will receive a diploma with honors at his graduation at the end of the month. He will further his academic career at the University of Ottawa where he'll be studying biomedical engineering. So congratulations, Nolan. And last but not least is Haley McLaughlin Shepherd from Renfrew Collegiate High School. Haley was a member of the rugby, volleyball, soccer, basketball, and track and field teams. She competed in biathlons and participated in the Royal Canadian Air Cadets fitness program. Haley is an Air Cadet with 653 Royal Canadian Air Cadet Squadron and has volunteered for the Poppy campaign with the Royal Canadian Legion. She volunteered with the Special Ed Buddy program at Renfrew Collegiate Institute. Haley has completed a number of art classes and has used what she learned to create artwork to donate to the elderly. Haley will study pre-health science at Algonquin College. We are pleased to present Haley this bursary. Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And congratulations to everybody, those 4 that were here, the 2 that weren't. Congratulations. We wish you all the luck as you go forward. And I guess now it's time to go home and finish studying. Good. We'll pause. You guys can just step up and clear. And thank you for coming. Next item on our agenda is a public meeting. And we have a separate thing. So as a public meeting, I will call the public meeting to order at 5:04 p.m. And I read part 2 here. The public meeting has been convened to hear comments and receive information from the public regarding 2 proposed applications to amend the township's zoning bylaw in accordance with the Planning Act. Staff, if you could please provide an overview. First of all, read the declaration and then we'll get into the overview. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. So first I will read the planner's statement. If any person or public body does not make an oral submission at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Whitewater Region before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of Council of the Township of Whitewater Region to the Ontario Land Tribunal. The person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. Under Section 3411 of the Planning Act, if Council decides to refuse an application or refuses or neglects to make a decision on an application within 120 days of the municipal clerk receiving the application, the applicant or the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing may appeal to the tribunal by filing an appeal with the clerk of the municipality. Section 3419 of the Planning Act states that not later than 20 days after giving of notice of passing of the bylaw, the applicant, any person or public body who made oral submissions at the public meeting or made a written submission to Council before the bylaw was passed, or the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, may appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal by filing an appeal with the clerk of the municipality. So with that, I'll provide an overview of the first application this evening. It was submitted by Steve Henry for the property at 2764 Snake River Line and described as part of Lot 19 Westmeath Concession 1. Perfect. So this application is seeking relief from a few sections of the Westmeath zoning bylaw in order to conduct a home industry, an auto repair shop, within an existing garage on the property. So this includes amending sections 14.2, sub A, sub 3, to reduce the minimum size requirement for a home industry from 2 hectares to 0.65 hectares. Section 3.13.7, to expand the permitted floor area of a home industry in an accessory building from 50 to 185.8 square meters. And lastly, section 14.2, subsection K, to reduce the buffer strip width between a home industry and a neighboring lot line from 15 meters to 10 meters. So the property has an area of 0.65 hectares and it contains an existing dwelling and the garage. It's surrounded, as you can see, by residential uses to the north, east and southeast, bush lot uses to the north, and agricultural uses to the south. The property is presently zoned rural in the former Township of Westmeath bylaw, and the effect of this zoning bylaw amendment would be to rezone the property to rural exception 33 to implement those provisions that I just mentioned. The lands are designated rural in the official plan, and both the provincial policy statement and official plan support the use of home industries in rural areas in context-appropriate locations to encourage economic development. Section 2.216 of the official plan also provides policies for home industries, mainly to make sure that they are accessory to a residential use, that they're small in scale, and that they're compatible with neighboring residential uses. The OP also provides a policy on buffering, such as trees or vegetation, as a way to mitigate conflicts between different types of land uses. So the zoning bylaw implements these policies in a few different ways. The intent of section 3.13.7 of the bylaw, which outlines a maximum floor area of 50 square meters, is to ensure that Might be running out of batteries, perhaps. Sorry, it was distracting. I was like, what is this red light? Pardon me. Sorry about that, everybody. So sections 14.2A and K of the bylaw are in place to ensure compatibility with neighboring residential uses. And they do that by requiring a 2-hectare minimum lot size and requiring a 15-meter buffer between the home industry and the neighboring lot line. So although the buffer distance in this case is 10 meters, the total distance between the garage and the neighboring house is approximately 27 meters, and this buffer area is comprised of existing trees, which will help reduce noise and continue to provide privacy between the properties. In consideration of the dense vegetation surrounding the garage and between the properties, as well as the fact that the home industry will be limited to the existing garage and no new buildings are proposed, it's staff opinion that the amendment to reduce the lot size and the buffer distance will not impede the compatibility with the neighboring residential uses. And further, at least at the time of the writing of the report and today, there had been no concerns that were raised by neighbors on this proposal. So in conclusion, the proposed amendments to section 3.137, 14.2A and K of the zoning bylaw will conform to the PPS and official plan and will maintain the intent of the zoning bylaw. Therefore, provided that no concerns are raised today at the public meeting, staff recommend that council support the proposal to modify the zoning from rural to rural exception 33 to permit a home industry in the existing garage on the property. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, our planner. Next, I just confirm if the applicant is present or online and would like to speak to their application. So the clerk has indicated no, they're not present. Is there any members of the public present today that would like to speak about this item as part of this public meeting? So, and there's none online. Perfect. So there is no one that's indicated they'd like to speak and no one online. Council, do you have any questions for our planner with respect to this application? Good, and none seen from council. And last confirmation is just from the clerk. Has there been any written submissions from members of the public on this item? And no written submissions have been received on this item. Excellent. So we have a second item to discuss as part of our public meeting. So if I could ask the planner to proceed with the second item.
I'm sorry. Sometimes my computer is a little slow. There it is.
Okay. Easy to follow along, but anyway. Okay. So the second application tonight was submitted by Brian and Mary Lynn Gervas for the property located at 651 Westmeath Road, described as part of Lot 12, Westmeath Concession NFA. And the applicants are seeking an amendment to the Westmeath zoning bylaw to allow for an accessory building, a private garage, to be built on the property prior to the construction of the primary residential use. So the subject property is currently vacant and it has an area of just over 21 hectares. Provincially significant wetlands occupy most of the lot, excluding the northern and southern portions. The property is surrounded by waterfront residential uses to the north, the wetlands and bush lots to the east and the west, and then there's residential, bush lot, and agricultural uses to the south. So in terms of relevant policies, the PPS does support rural development when it's locally appropriate and compatible with the rural landscape. It also requires that natural features and areas be protected for the long term. In the official plan, the property has a few different designations across it, including waterfront, environmental protection, and rural. But the location that the proposed garage is in is the rural portion, the rural designation, pardon me, which does permit low density residential development. Section 5.37 of the official plan also provides policies relating to natural heritage features, such as provincially significant wetlands, and requires that development proposals adjacent to these features demonstrate that there are no negative impacts on them. So the property is also split zoned environmental protection exception 2 and waterfront vicinity exception 39 in the Westmeath zoning bylaw. So the EP E2 zone, and I think this is a little bit, if we can scroll down, Dave, perhaps in the report, or scroll up just to follow along a bit. Yeah, that's perfect. It represents a 30-meter natural habitat buffer from the wetland on the property, as well as a creek that drains into the wetland. And the buffer area is to be maintained in a natural state to ensure slope stability and to protect the functions of the wetland. The portion of the property in which the garage is going to be built is also in the waterfront vicinity exception 39 zone, and this site-specific provision also implements and reiterates a 30-meter setback from the boundary of the wetland. So section 19.1 of the bylaw outlines what the permitted uses are within the waterfront vicinity zone. And an accessory building, a private garage with the name accessory, it's not a primary use, so it's not permitted to be built before the existing primary use. And for this reason, this is what the zoning is aiming to do, is amend that so that the garage can be built first. So during the circulation of the application, we did receive one email with comments from neighbor after the report was published, and I think you all have a copy of that. Okay, so as you can see, the email raised concerns or questions about whether the property was meeting the setbacks to the neighboring property, as well as potential impacts to the wetland, and if the private garage may be used for commercial purposes. So I did speak to the neighbor. Staff also went to the site to confirm that the setbacks are being met, and they are. And we also let the neighbor know that no commercial uses have been applied for, whether in the building permit or the zoning amendment. So, if they were to do that in the future, perhaps they could do so, but right now the zoning bylaw is explicitly states that the garage will not be used for human habitation or commercial use. So bringing that all together, it's staff's opinion that the proposed amendment is consistent with the PPS and the official plan. The protection of the wetland and creek is implemented via the adjacent environmental protection zone, as well as the site-specific amendment. This application will continue to maintain that 30-meter setback. The applicant is also meeting all the other yard setback requirements. So residential development is permitted in the rural designation, which includes development that is supportive of a dwelling, such as accessory structures. And the bylaw has been prepared to only allow for a private garage and includes a point that no human habitation or commercial activity shall be permitted in the garage. Therefore, provided that no additional comments or concerns are raised tonight, staff recommend that council support the proposal to amend the zoning from waterfront vicinity to waterfront vicinity, exception 57. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Benzie. Next step is and ask the clerk if the applicant is present and would like to speak on their behalf.
No.
Good, and aside from the letter that was provided just prior to the meeting starting, was there any other written documents provided from the public?
Nothing was received.
Good. And is there any members of the public present here today that would like to speak to this application? Good, and none seen. And what I'll do is I'm just going to pause. I don't know if everybody in council's had a chance to read the content of the letter. The planner did speak to it, but I'll just give us 30 seconds to take a look if you want to take a look at it, because it wasn't provided in your package earlier. Good. Okay. Is there any questions or concerns from members of council? I'll start with Councillor Olmsted.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Alex. I get asked a question a lot in this exact circumstance where somebody wants to build an accessory building prior to a dwelling. And I don't know the right answer all the time. I do know there's conditions that need to be met. Is the township looking for assurances that a dwelling will be built on the property, or does it really matter to us? Sorry to put you on the spot.
We're operating under the assumption that a dwelling will be built. There's nothing that necessarily ties and requires an applicant to to do so, and that's why they're coming for the zoning bylaw amendment to allow that.
Right.
We can't sort of force them to eventually build a house, but it's an interesting, not conundrum, but
So does anybody, and maybe Ivan, you can chime, does anybody have background of why we have this law to say that you cannot, unless you get an exception, you cannot build on a property prior to building the, so I know of a person that built a building with approval before the house was built, and it was a great advantage to them to have, storage of a lot of materials and tools and that kind of stuff, to have that ready rather than shipping in shipping containers, that kind of stuff. It was a real advantage to them to have a building. I personally don't have a problem if somebody built a structure as long as they didn't live in it, and whatever, 10 years later built a house or didn't build a house and sold the property, as long as that's not a dwelling. I can't see any other reason why.
Can I take it one stab? So there is a provision in the bylaw, one of them, I can't recall if it's the Westmeath or the Ross one off the top of my head, but there is, that says if you need it, you can have an accessory building like a shipping container as a temporary construction use. So while you're building a house, you can have that.
Right.
This is a little bit of a different situation because it's someone who actually just wants a garage.
Right.
In terms of why we have this in zoning, I think there's a couple reasons. We're not the only township that does this. This is common throughout the province. I think one is that there's been concerns in the past where people are living in garages. So, the idea is that the primary use is done first. And then another thing has been that, particularly in more residential areas, is that these places have been planned and designed to have homes. So when you have a when you have a garage, it may not be in keeping with the original intent of the plan for that community, and that's why you come and do the zoning bylaw amendment. But certainly it's something that can be discussed when we do
I'm fine.
updated zoning bylaw.
Just to be clear, I'm fine with the way it is.
Yeah.
I'd like to know the reasons that we have it, and that's good. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't know if the CAO wants to add anything, but.
I would only add that there was mentioned by Planner Benzie that in a sort of urban community, it would be sort of, it would provide constraints aesthetically if you're driving down a rural condensed subdivision and then there's just these garages built. But in the rural character, it's a little bit less, it's a little bit differently perceived. We do allow for accessory buildings for forestry and agricultural purposes, where it's storing tractors and chainsaws or what may it be, before a dwelling's built. So for example, if this specific structure was being used for forestry purposes, like where he has his tractor and stuff like that, but in this case, it's not the case. It's like a residential garage, so it changes the character of it a bit. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just a note, that is a question that's going to come up again on the 5th of July. So it's good. We have our comprehensive zoning bylaw. Councillor Bell, you were next.
Just clarification though, is the intent of these individuals to build a residence coming forward, or is as far as you know right now, it's just the garage to this point?
At this point, I believe the intention is just to build the garage. However, to my knowledge, it's just to build the garage. I would have to go back to the applicant and confirm their plans on when the future house would be built.
Good. Councillor Bell?
Yeah, I just wonder, like, if these properties are meant to be residential and that's what we're trying to accomplish with these properties, like a site plan can be drawn up and a garage can be included in the site plan, and the garage could be built before the rest of the property, right? So, yeah, I'm wondering what the purpose, like, I understand the purposes of building a garage for storage and with the intended purpose of building a house in the future. But yeah, I was just wondering in this specific case, if the purpose is to build a residence in the next year, 2, 3, why that just wouldn't be included into like a site plan of the property whenever you submit your building permits? Like why that separation is kind of in place?
Yeah, so we did look at the site plan just to make sure that a residence could be there with while still meeting all the setbacks. Perhaps the CAO can confirm this, but if they were to put the dwelling or residence on the building permit, at that time they would be applying for a building permit for the house, and there's like a cost associated with that. So at this time, that's not the applicant's intention. They only want to apply for a building permit for the garage. So that's why it was not included on the site plan. But we did make sure that there is enough of a building envelope for a future dwelling when the time comes.
Yeah, so just with the wetlands surrounding this and like the ecologically significant portions of this property,
Yeah.
it's not going to be an issue to put, like, they're not going to come and try to do up a site plan and say, oh, actually, we don't have enough room. Like,
Exactly.
that has been, that's been considered when putting
Yeah.
them, yeah, okay.
Any other questions from members of council? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I'm just questioning if there's any time frame on that. Is there anything in the report that says you have X number of years to? Because I thought we had something where it was like a 2-year, when anybody wants to build in advance, there was like a 2-year time frame. Is that the case here, or is?
It's not the case here. We haven't put in any time frame on when they are required to build a residence.
Should we?
That's a good question. I think in this case, I wouldn't recommend it. There's been times in the past where we have supported the construction of garage prior to a dwelling being applied, like a building permit for a dwelling. At that time, that wasn't raised as an issue. So I think in the spirit of consistency, we could move forward with this. I also, just given the location and the fact that it is quite a large property, from a character perspective, I don't think there's huge impacts to the surrounding area that would require a time frame to get it done as soon as possible. If this were in a more residential area, perhaps that'd be something that we'd be considered. I'm also not sure. I'd have to do some more research onto how we can put time limits in zoning bylaws. Perhaps that's something I would pass that on to our CAO if he has a second opinion on that. I'm not sure if that's the suitable venue is to put a time period on a site-specific zoning amendment. But I will just confirm that.
Yeah, I think council would have seen one in 2022 on Rapid Road. Somebody wanted to build his garage prior to the house. He had indicated 3 years he was going to build, and due to the pandemic pricing, he just couldn't go ahead with the house. We didn't impose a time frame for the construction of the house. I'm not sure if he's built it as of yet, but we could review that. But I would concur with Planner Benzie that I don't think in this case we would apply a restriction on time frame. But we got to be cognizant that the property exists as a garage there. It's probably marketable to certain buyers, so that they could just build a house and have their 2 structures, if you will, which is common in the rural Ontario. So, yeah, I concur with Alex. As it pertains to time frame, I'm not. We'd have to do some more research. I don't have anything on top of my head. Thanks.
Thank you, and Councillor Trim.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Deputy Mayor.
As we're all forgetting, as lead, I'm thinking that this is being brought forward to council because it's a zoning amendment, which means that because it's being the zone is being amended, the normal rules don't apply. We wouldn't allow an amendment like this in a residential area, for instance. And so because it's an amendment, the restrictions aren't there. So there's no time limit. But I think that may be the answer to this. It's a special situation for this piece of property only at this time.
Thank you, Councillor Trim. Is there any other questions for our planner related to this? Anything? I'm going to go over here first. We'll come back to Councillor Bell. So Councillor Tabbert.
So he's going to build a garage and not build a house, as far as we know, on property. And we don't know what he's going to do with this garage, correct?
That was, in the application, it's clear that it's a private garage.
Yes, the application is for a private garage, and we have made it explicit in the zoning bylaw that that private garage cannot be used for human habitation, nor can it be used for commercial purposes.
Good, CAO?
If I could just put some content to it. So the owner owns this 100-acre or just under 100-acre property. He has family in the area. He wants to utilize the property with his primary family and extended family. So they probably have trails through the park or through the property. So they want to use this building to store vehicles, but also to utilize it as a gathering point, if you will. So that's where it gets out of the forestry use or agricultural use naturally, and moves into the residential realm. There's nobody sleeping there. There's no cooking appliances. It's just a gathering place. Think of a sugar shack of sorts where people gather, for certain times of the year. So this is a place to stay warm if they're snowshoeing in the winter for a short period of time through the day. Stuff like that is the purpose of the garage.
Good. And Councillor Moore, I'll give you one opportunity. Good. And back to Councillor Bell.
Sorry, yeah, just something caught my eye on this email. So it is explicitly stated that it's not for commercial use. This individual's operated a garage prior. If the neighbors are concerned about commercial operations happening out of this garage, like I just see here, what assurances do the township have that this won't happen? There are no assurances from the township because you can't control what people do on their own property every day of the week. But what happens if somebody is operating commercially a garage out of that garage or out of this private garage, what is the process there to make sure that that's not occurring? Especially just the thing that's kind of catches my eye about this is just the surrounding significant wetlands surrounding it. That's the only thing that's kind of catching my eye about this.
Do you want to address that one, planner? Okay. Good.
Yep. So we did talk a little bit internally with this with our building department, and there is a separate commercials garages fall under a different part of the building code than residential garages. The applicant is going to be has applied for a private residential garage. So if a commercial operation was to be operating out of here, it would not be in compliance with the building code, nor would it be in compliance with the zoning. So the standard approach to bylaw enforcement would be done in this situation because they wouldn't be in compliance with either.
Awesome. Any other questions from council? None. And if the applicant was here, they'd have an opportunity to have one last opportunity at addressing us. Good. Well, thank you very much, Planner Benzie. That ends our public meeting at 5:33 p.m. And we will flip back to our regular council meeting. And on item 7, following the public meeting, we have 2 zoning bylaw amendments before us. The first one is for 2764 Snake River Line, and the recommendation is that Council of Township of Whitewater Region approve an amendment to the zoning category for the property known municipally as 2764 Snake River Line from rural zone to rural exception 33 zone. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Trim, seconded by Councillor Bell. Is there any other subsequent questions or comments from members of council? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? And it's carried. Second item is a zoning bylaw amendment for 651 Westmeath Road. The recommendation is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve a modification to the site-specific zoning category for the property known municipally as 651 Westmeath Road from waterfront vicinity exception 39 zone to waterfront vicinity exception 57 zone. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Trim, seconded by Deputy Mayor. Is there any comments or questions from members of council? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? And it's carried. Thank you. Next is item number 8, our mayor's address. And I'll just jump into it. Over the past 2 weeks, I've attended 16 meetings on behalf of council. Included was an interview with the Valley Heritage Radio on our Whitewater Region Seniors Home Support and Active Living pilot that aired yesterday. So if anybody was listening, you would have heard me talking for 25 minutes about our pilot. Went very well. Our main focus of a lot of the meetings over the past 2 weeks was with our community recreation associations, the Beachburg Agricultural Society, and Muskrat Minor Hockey, in order to gather some input for the report on future ice operations. Overall, the work that was put into the presentation that you're going to receive later tonight has been very significant and has essentially taken over our CAO's schedule for the past number of weeks. Recreation is an important part of the township, and we cannot lose sight of just how much our volunteer community organizations carried this function for our residents over the past 50 years. I don't think I can exaggerate when I say that we have had unfettered and full access to some of the most incredible arenas since the 1960s. And very little of that had to do with tax dollars and the township. These were fundraised, built, and run by communities. Unfortunately, the realities of aging infrastructure and rising costs, decreasing users, and decreasing volunteer bases have all led to the township taking responsibility for rink operations in 2017. And it was very clear from our discussions with the recreation leaders in our community that we need to start to look ahead for our future. We now need to define what we want Whitewater Region recreation and culture to look like for the next generation, and what we as a council are going to do to formulate, fund, and staff that vision. Next, there were a couple of recognitions I just wanted to make. First, today is the National Indigenous Peoples Day, and this day gives us a chance to recognize the many achievements of the country's Indigenous peoples. The day also celebrates the distinct cultures and unique traditions of the Inuit, First Nations, and Métis people. We also have Canada Multicultural Day coming up on June 27th to honor the many cultural communities that help to build such strong and vibrant communities that we take advantage of today. And of course, culminates with Canada Day on July 1st, our birthday, where we see a number of events in our communities that I'm sure we'll hear more about later in the meeting. I also wanted to just recognize again, as we finish another school year and another class walks out of their high school doors for the last time. In addition, we are also seeing a number of folks graduating from college and university. Social media is full of the photos. So I just wanted to make sure that we congratulate all our residents on everything that they've achieved. The upcoming weeks will still be busy for council, even though we're entering the summer pause. Prior to the break for summer, we have scheduled a special council meeting on July 5th at 4:45 p.m. This will include another public meeting that will hear feedback from our residents on the comprehensive zoning bylaw review. And last point I wanted to raise, I just wanted to close with a big thank you to all the staff once again. This past week we had an emergency control group meeting where we reviewed the flood response that we went through this spring. And it amazed me again when you reflect back on just everything that was accomplished. The group is going to come back to council with a full report, so you'll all have an opportunity to get briefed on what was accomplished and what recommendations they're going to put forth for how we could do it next time. But I just wanted to thank everyone for everything they did to help our residents through the emergency, whether it was hauling sand, filling sandbags, on the phone with residents, doing wellness checks, working with the province to continue to seek disaster recovery funding, or working with MNRF to track the weather and water level forecasts. So I just wanted to recognize them again. Thank you so much. Good. Good, and that ends my mayor's address. And our very patient members of the public that are here, we are now on to your item. So the next item is public comments. And clerk, we've been advised we have one tonight.
Yes, Mr. Scott Bell.
So, Mr. Scott Bell, if you can make your way to the podium and make sure your mic is on. I'll just remind the members of the public and council that the public comments section of our agenda is to afford the public the opportunity to comment on agenda items that we are discussing the evening of. He is allocated 3 minutes, and unfortunately, there are no questions or comments or discussion by council. It's 3 minutes for him to share his thoughts with us and the public, and then we can use that when we deliberate the agenda item later on in the agenda. Good? Mr. Bell, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Scott Bell, and I live at 561 Bennett Road in Forsters Falls, and thank you for allowing me to speak at tonight's meeting. My wife, Jennifer, and I own property along Moxham Road. We purchased the property 2 years ago from my father, Raymond Bell. We noticed in early April that the culvert and the road at the creek had collapsed and washed away. I called Lane Carew shortly after that, and I was curious when the culvert and the road would be fixed. And Lane Carew was great to deal with. He listened to our concerns and explained that the township's priority at that time was the flooding on the Ottawa River, which Jennifer and I totally understood at that time. I've also been talking to Ivan Burton, who has been a great communicator. He's been giving me many updates. Recently, he informed me that he was going to approach the council and advise them not to repair the culvert and the road until the spring of 2024. And that is why I'm here this afternoon. I would encourage the council to consider the following issues that I have encountered since the road has washed out. Number one, we have not been able to access our property. We have a fourth field past that culvert and road that we could not get to this spring in order to plant our soybean crop. We have lost approximately $5,000 of income as Moxham Road is the only access point to that part of our property. Over the past 2 years, we've invested a great deal of time and money into converting the pasture land into cash crop land, so it is essential that we are able to access our property. Number two, I'm concerned about what would happen if there's a forest fire, as there would be no access for emergency vehicles and firefighters to extinguish the fire. And there is a large area of forest and property owned by many other people back there. Number three, there's another property there owned by Bell Lumber, which is owned by my father, Raymond Bell, my brothers, Alan and Robert, and myself. And we cannot access our 40 acres, which negatively impacts our small business. Number four, there's many four-wheelers and snowmobiles that enjoy the recreation on Moxham Road. Number five, my concerns about environmental. There's many different habitat in that creek. So in summary, I would like to express the need for the road and the culvert to be fixed this summer or this fall. I have serious concerns that the spring of 2024 would be too late to fix the culvert. In my opinion, the conditions in mid-April, late April, or even in early May would be too wet to allow the bigger machinery to get to that area to fix the culvert and the road, which would make it too late for me to be able to access and plant our fourth field once again. So I really appreciate your time, and I really appreciate your consideration on all these concerns. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Bell, and I think it's very much appreciated when we have members of the public who come and share their opinion. So we appreciate your time. Excellent. And just to confirm with our clerk, there's no other speakers. Was there any written comments to any of the agenda items that we'd like to share?
No, none, nothing received.
Good. Thank you. Excellent. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is reports. 10.1 is the Bennett Meadows subdivision. draft conditions and zoning bylaw amendments, and I'll read the recommendation, and it is quite long. Recommendation that the council endorses by resolution the township's conditions of draft approval attached to Schedule A related to the Bennett Meadows and direct staff to forward a copy and resolution to the County of Renfrew Subdivision Approval Authority. And 2, that the council approve the amendments to a portion of the property described as Part Lot 6, Concession 1, west of Muskrat Lake, WML, is that correct? Thank you. Ross zoning bylaw number 2392 to modify the zoning category of the subject land from rural to residential 3, exception 3, and Cobden zoning bylaw number 8914 for the property described as Part Lot 6, Concession 1, West Muskrat Lake, to modify the zoning category of the subject land from community facility and public open space to residential 3, exception 7. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Trim, seconded by Councillor Olmsted. And Planner Benzie.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Nicholson. So this is an important update on the Bennett Meadows subdivision. Just as a refresher for the new councillors here, plans of subdivisions are applications that go to the County of Renfrew for draft and final approval. And a complete application for a plan of subdivision called Bennett Meadows for the lands just described by the mayor was submitted by J.L. Richards and Associates on behalf of Bonashire Excavation, Inc. It was submitted to the County of Renfrew in March of 2022. The plan includes 11 blocks for row house dwellings and 3 blocks for semi-detached units for a total of 50 dwelling units. The plan also includes a new street, which would be an extension of John Street, a stormwater management pond, and a block for a future expansion of the street that will convey stormwater to the pond. So when the plan of subdivision was submitted to the county, a zoning bylaw amendment was submitted to the township. So the lands straddle the former township of Ross as well as the former village of Cobden. So the bylaw that's before you today actually amends both of those bylaws. The lands are currently zoned community facility and public open space in the Cobden zoning bylaw and rural in the Ross zoning bylaw. So the intent of the zoning bylaw is to rezone the property that falls under Cobden to residential 3, exception 7, and to rezone the property that falls under the Ross bylaw to residential 3, exception 3. And the purpose of this zoning amendment is to enable the residential use and the density that is proposed in the plan of subdivision. So the public meeting for both applications took place back on June 22nd in 2022. And this meeting was held concurrently with the application for official plan amendment number 34. And as you'll recall from a couple weeks, month and a half ago, these lands are affected by that official plan amendment, which extends the settlement area of the village of Cobden by redesignating the property from rural to village community. And so at that meeting, council passed a resolution in support of the official plan amendment, and the amendment was approved by county council on May 31st, 2023. So while the county was working with the applicant, our staff, and the Ministry of Transportation on the OPA, at the same time we were working with the applicant on the township's draft conditions for the plan of subdivision. So through a resolution, if passed tonight, we will submit these conditions to the county, and they will then review them, perhaps amend or add their own, and they liaise directly with the applicant on the issuance of draft approval. But the township's draft conditions have been designed to ensure that the development will occur in an orderly fashion and protect the health and safety of existing and future residents. The conditions will further ensure that the municipal services involved, including the water, the sanitary sewer, the roads, sidewalks, and other facilities, are constructed and reviewed in accordance with provincial, municipal, and engineering standards. So as outlined in their report, there are several key policies that staff considered for both the creation of the draft conditions as well as the zoning bylaw amendment in the PPS and the official plan. A few that I just want to highlight is policy 2.21 of the official plan, which talks about housing. And it reflects what's in the PPS on encouraging a diversity of housing types as well as forms and densities that are designed to be a little bit more affordable to folks. And the Bennett Meadows development contains row houses and semi-detached units, which enhance the diversity of housing types that are here in the township for current and future needs. Section 2.212 of the official plan speaks to policies relating to water and sewer services. So the proposed development will be accommodated on municipal water and sewer services, details of which were outlined in a functional servicing study that was prepared by the applicant and submitted with the subdivision application. And the study does demonstrate that the lands can be serviced and developed as a medium-density residential development. And the conditions that we have contain provisions to ensure that these services are designed and constructed to our satisfaction. Similarly, Section 2.230 of the official plan speaks to stormwater management, and that functional servicing study includes a storm servicing strategy, and as mentioned, the draft plan of subdivision includes a block for stormwater management, a stormwater management pond, as well as a block for conveyance of water to that pond. And we have draft conditions, numbers 18 to 22, that include provisions to ensure detailed drawings and reports for the stormwater system and that they're provided to the township's satisfaction. So to conclude, staff support the rezoning of the subject lands as the proposal is consistent with the PPS and the official plan once OPA 34 is in effect. And I don't think I mentioned this, but I believe today or yesterday was the final day for the appeal period. So we should be hearing from the county on the status of that soon. The conditions of draft approval are also satisfactory to the Departments of Community Development and Public Works. So once the county issues draft approval, the applicant will undertake detailed design as stipulated in the conditions. And in the future, additional matters relating to the subdivision will be coming forward again to council, such as street naming and the actual execution of the subdivision agreement. And that concludes my presentation on that report, and happy to answer questions.
Just while it should be at the very bottom. Yeah. Good. Excellent. Thank you, Planner Benzie. Is there any questions or comments from members of council? Yes, Councillor Moore.
Just one comment, and she actually did cover it, so I'm glad you covered it. Over the years, I've been involved in municipal stuff for a lot of years, and I can show you two different places where homes were built and then the road was built. And the roads are higher than the property, so we're constantly getting phone calls, we need a culvert, we don't need a culvert, the water runs into my driveway, etc. So this way here, they're going to build the road and the facilities prior to building homes, is that correct?
Planner?
Oh, that's a good question. I may have to, to reiterate re-ask, are they going to build the road prior to the building of the homes?
So that the homes are higher than the roadway instead of the opposite and they get flooded.
So the whole design of the subdivision is based on like a geotechnical analysis. It's designed in a way that goes with the contour, so whether I believe it's all kind of draining to the north and then conveyed to the east. So in terms of whether the road is going to be higher or the houses are going to be higher, that's all going to be done through the detailed design by the geotechnical consultant. In terms of what happens first, I don't think I can confirm that, and maybe perhaps I'll ask either Lane or the CAO if they have an understanding of what typically happens. This is the first time I've been involved in a subdivision at the local township level, so if I can ask a colleague for support on the timing.
Good.
Yeah,
CAO.
certainly. So the next steps, like Alex or Planner Benzie was mentioning, is the detailed design. So this is like a first phase of approval. The next step is they'll do detailed design, show the grades, the elevations of all the property where the houses, the finished floor of the houses. The road will get constructed prior to the houses. So we'll confirm that the elevations are proper and the water drains correctly. But there's a requirement to build the road and typically put a first lift of asphalt prior to issuing building permits for the homes. In some instances, you could allow houses to proceed before the road. Those instances would be like model homes, so if they want to get a model home built up so they could start marketing the homes there, or early servicing agreements. So in most instances, we would not issue occupancy. You can't occupy the home until the road is to a certain standard. So road first, housing after, other than a certain exceptions. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good, and I'll just add, the example of a plan of subdivision ensures that the point you're raised about how does the drainage, fit into the overall plan? A plan to a subdivision allows that. Other types of builds don't necessarily take that into account. Okay, so this plan of subdivision does allow for that. Good, other questions? Councillor Olmsted.
Yeah, this may go to the CAO as well, as I know. You may have to defer to him, as I know he was involved early on here. But the area to the farthest right of the Block 7, I guess just before the cul-de-sac, it says owned by municipality. There's a stretch across there. Do you see that? Yeah, right there, right? Yeah.
It's a walkway, pathway,
Okay.
but the planner will dig
So
into it.
is that just an area that they convey to us for future?
That's correct. So there's a whole, about 14 acres of property that was conveyed from BEI to the township, and that's for parkland purposes. So when you develop subdivisions, there's a requirement in the Planning Act that you need to convey land to the township to develop parkland. So back in 2018-19, when I first started, the former CAO had entered into an agreement with BEI, subject to council approval, to transfer us 14 acres of land around the arena in exchange for REN Phase 3-4 and the development of these lands. So that was the equivalent of parkland exchange for this subdivision and the one in REN. And that strip there is, in fact, it's a strip of land held by us, and it's supposed to connect our parkland, the 14 acres, to the Algonquin Trail. So there's no requirements at this stage that it be developed, because it would lead to nowhere, which is just a field that we own. But certainly in the future, as things get developed, that there's a potential connection point.
Super, thank you.
Excellent. Good question. Any other questions from members of council? No, I have one that I'm going to throw at, and I checked. I noticed in there that there is a requirement for each building lot to have a tree. Did we do that for Wren, or is that new for this Menet subdivision? Sorry, and I know our new planner, she can't be expected to go back in history, so I'll go to the CAO.
So that was a requirement in Wren. If it wasn't every lot, it was every other lot. Certainly, just modern development requires some type of landscaping in the front yards, and it's to be held on private property, so we don't own the tree, the township, and it's the owner to maintain it. So it's pretty consistent with modern development proposals. There's a landscaping plan that may be developed as part of the next phase when they do the detailed design to say it's a maple or whatever type of tree it is. And then in the agreement, there's an obligation for the future owner to maintain that tree. So if it happens to pass, then they would have to replace it, perhaps. Yes, thanks.
Again, another benefit of a plan of subdivision, it includes all the aspects to help make that community into beautiful. Is there any other questions or comments from members of council? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Just one question. If a homeowner purchasing decides they don't want a tree on their front lawn, because there are individuals who do not want trees on their front lawn, is that a given that it has to happen? Or?
We're certainly not at that stage yet in the approval process. When we get to the subdivision agreement, which will be a bit of time down the road, that's where we specify we require the tree in a specific agreement that gets registered on title. If council so wishes to choose that it not be a requirement to extend beyond the developer, we could term it that the future purchaser is not required to maintain the tree. The reality is as the temperature warms up, trees are important to provide shade and to reduce the temperatures in our urban areas. So if that should answer that. I will add, though, if I could, this is really exciting for the township. I mean, there's 50 units here. This is the first phase of development. There's still some work to do, but this is a different style of housing that's available in our community. These are row houses compared to the semis and singles we've seen in the past. We do have some other row houses that were built by another developer on John Street, and it appears to be extremely successful as it pertains to the marketability, sale, and/or rental. There's also an indication, there's also a sidewalk to be constructed on the one side of the road here, which is exciting too. So that'll connect to Astrolab, and when we redevelop Astrolab in the future, we'll also have an urban design, so it could include a sidewalk as well to get people to Main Street. So very exciting development. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Good. I'll just echo what the CAO said. He kind of stole my thought. I love this opportunity. Like, I mean, councils wait terms after terms for opportunities to do subdivisions. We've now been able to do one last term and one this one. This is incredible, and I support not just the staff and the effort that's made between here and county, but also our local businesses are making this happen. So exciting for us to see our community grow and the potential here that we have. So thank you. Good. No other comments or questions. We'll call for a vote. All those in favor? And it's carried. Thank you. Good. In fact, I know that the next item has a guest coming, so I'm going to call for a short recess. It's 6 p.m. now. We'll take 5 minutes, stretch your legs, use the washroom, and we'll get set up for the next presentation. Welcome back to our regular council meeting of the Township of Whitewater Region. We are going to reconvene here at 6:06 p.m. Next on our agenda is item 10.2, which is the Cobden Wastewater Treatment Plant Annual Report and Overflow Update. The recommendation is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region receive this report for information purposes as it relates to the Cobden Wastewater Treatment Plant overflows and operations. A mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Olmsted. And our environmental superintendent is going to take this one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So tonight, as mentioned, I'm here to provide an update on the wastewater treatment plant. Mainly, we'll start with a discussion on the 2022 annual report results, and then we'll also undertake some discussions on some updates of more recent events, mainly the 2023, some overflows that occurred during the spring melt this year. So to start off, just a little background. So our wastewater treatment plant here in Cobden underwent significant upgrades in order to improve the quality of treated wastewater to better meet regulatory requirements. The project also increased the overall capacity of the plant in order to help reduce the number of sewage treatment bypasses and overflows and to support future development in the village. This report I'm going to discuss, like I said, the 2022 annual report, but also some of the operational challenges and successes of the plant in the most since commissioning in October 2021. So to start off, what I thought I'd do a little out of order from the report itself, but I just wanted to discuss some of the a little bit of an explanation on the plant's capacity, because that sort of primes a lot of the things that Aqua will speak to after me. So first off, the old plant, it should be noted, that had approved treated capacity of 696 cubic meters per day. And it had a peak hydraulic capacity, which is similar to the maximum daily flow of 2,280 cubic meters a day. So part of the plant design process, JP2G, the town's consultant for the plant upgrades, undertook a study to determine what the appropriate capacity of the plant would be in 2015. Part of that study involved looking at previous flows over the previous 10 years, and they also looked at infiltration. They did an infiltration study on the infrastructure, the collection system, and those rates and volumes that they saw during that 10-year period were used to establish the plant's design capacities. So the three numbers that are key here when we talk about design capacity is, the first one is the average daily flow. So that is the number that we look at over the course of the entire year to see if to see that the plant is meeting our ECA, our environmental compliance approval numbers. So that is the total capacity that the total treatment that the plant undertakes divided by 365. And ideally, that should be under the new daily flow, which was 1,000. Previously, the capacity was set at 696, and we were regularly going over that limit. So the new limit was set at 1,000. The next key number here that we wanted to talk about was the maximum daily flow, which is 3,500. So that is the limit, that it's a maximum daily flow that's encountered in a 24-hour period throughout the year. So this new plant, as per GP2G, was designed to have a maximum daily flow capacity of 3,500, which is higher than all of the maximum daily flows encountered during the previous 5 years. So these are the two key numbers that we sort of consider when looking at how the plant's capacity and how it is maintaining, or how it is actually treating effluent before it's discharged. The last one we talk about is the peak hourly flow of 5,000, and that one basically is just like more of an instantaneous number. It's what the plant would be expected to be able to handle at a short period of time, in the order of like 10 minutes, like a shorter time period. So there is much more detailed information on this in the letter that was provided by JP2G. But that sort of primes things for what Aqua will be talking about here. So, so now I would like to pass this over to Ashley Pilgrim and Kaylee Sarr from Aqua, and they can go over the some more of the fine details on the plant's operation over the last couple of years.
Thanks, Deanna. I'm going to try to get through this as quickly, as concisely as possible. With that being said, I do speak in a lot of acronyms, so if I say something you guys don't understand, please stop me and I'd love to explain. So in reviewing your 2022 annual report, this report is required under the ECA that Deanna was speaking about. There's 11 sections in it, from compliance to maintenance, any complaints that were received throughout the year, as well as sludge generated. So breaking down that report that is appended in Deanna's report, it's basically all summarized here. So last year there was no ministry inspections. That being said, it's not uncommon that we don't see them at sewage plants. Water plants are annual. Wastewater plants are more of a 5-year basis. We also did not receive any Ministry of Labor inspections or issues of non-compliance. So in 2022, we did have 9 community complaints. These all related back to a sewer blockage. In that case, Aqua dispatches operators to check for flow above and below the complaint and determine whether it's a trunk main or a lateral. If it's a lateral, we'll call in contractors to flush the line and to camera it and remove any blockages. And if it's something beyond that, a plumber is contacted. It also summarizes our annual average daily flow, coordinating back to what Deanna was just saying with our new rated capacity of 1,000 cubic meters per day. Last year, we experienced on average 765 cubic meters, so about 76% of what the plant's rated to do. There was no spills or overflows reported in 2022, but we did have 1 disinfection system bypass. So when I say this, I mean that your UV disinfection system was operating, but I don't have trending to back up that it was. So we had to report it as a bypass and as no disinfection was occurring. Last year, we had 690 cubic meters disposed of liquid biosolids, and that was at the Renfrew wastewater treatment plant and the Mississippi Mills wastewater treatment plant for further processing. And with the generator on site, we were able to process 5,131 cubic meters. So the centrifuge takes that liquid sludge and it separates the dry from the liquid. Liquid returns to the plant to be retreated, and our dry sludge is hauled to Ross landfill. Moving on to the next section, we're going to discuss some operational challenges that we faced this year and since the plant has began to run. Something we're noticing more is a concentrated waste from a brewery. It's suspected at this point, and when we say concentrated, that's quantified in a BOD, so a biochemical oxygen demand. This is a fancy way of saying how much oxygen is being consumed by the aerobic microbiology and bacteria in the wastewater. So of course, a higher BOD load, the more dissolved oxygen is going to be consumed. This is where we run into the issues. So when we receive a volume of high BOD, we experience a low DO event. In 2022, we were called in on 11 times. When that happened, we sampled the wastewater, and we basically are left to wait for the blowers, make sure that they're operating as prescribed, and then, of course, whenever that high BOD load has made its way through the plant, the DO has begun to rise again. It should be noted here that the BOD can be as high as 1,700 milligrams per liter, and typically the raw wastewater is averaging around 300 milligrams per liter. We've also met with the township and the brewery staff to kind of go over a plan to handle that in the future. I think that's something Deanna wants to speak to.
Yeah, so I just want to let council know that the staff have been in close contact with the brewery, and we are developing a plan to better a lot of the issues that we might be experiencing are just simply due to communication, and where the plant can do a better job of handling the waste coming in if they're given a good heads up on it. There's some strategies that they have to be able to handle it properly. They just need to know ahead of time. So we're working with the brewery to set up some better communication protocols to ensure that when they have an intention of discharging something that will be difficult for the plant to to treat, that we're prepared and we can set up a plan to be able to do it so that it doesn't result in problems being experienced by the plant. So the breweries definitely, they are a strong community partner, and they definitely let us know that they're willing to work with us and to help reduce any issues going forward. So really, this is an operational problem that just is a matter of getting a good plan in place, and so that things can continue uninterrupted at the plant later on.
An additional problem, as you guys are all aware, that we've experienced are overflows during the spring freshet. So during April, whenever we had a large volume of snowpack to be melted with the ice storm that occurred on April 6th, so there was additional precipitation, we overflowed from April 4th to April 9th. This totaled for 89 hours, and JP2G estimated 15,172 meters cubed was discharged without being properly treated. It did receive preliminary treatment where rags and grit was removed, but the rest of the treatment that the plant would have provided was not able to be given at that time. There was 2 other overflow events in May. One occurred from May 1st to 2nd, and that was a 31-hour event where 788 cubic meters was discharged with partial treatment, and again from May 3rd to May 8th for 114 hours total, and 3,500 cubic meters discharged without full treatment. Those last 2 in May were also a result of precipitation that occurred in excess of our 3,500 cubic meters. In combination with other plant operating issues that were experienced. So that is why our May event lasted as long as it did. There was issues with a flow meter that kept one train out of production, and an issue with the UV that kept the train out of production. So lots of stuff going on at once, but we got it treated as well as we could. I think that takes us into the issues with the transmembrane pressure. That also related to our overflow condition.
So the TMP is what, sorry, Kaylee is referring to is these are like a vacuum pump that pull the water through these very fine strainers. And what happens is after time, the strainers start to get plugged, the pumps have to pull that much harder, and then it starts to get restricted, and we can only take so much from there. The plant is also, the rest of the plant ahead of it is all level. So the higher the flow is coming in, we can't remove the liquid fast enough to treat it. What we're finding is, like, we've done 7 cleanings on each train since, 7 CIP, sorry, which is clean in place, and 3 chemically enhanced backwashes that are just a shorter duration, kind of a modified version of the CIP. Yeah, since then we've done 7, which each one of the cleanings will reduce the overall TMP, which was around 107 kPa, down about 10 each time. So now we're running operationally about 30 kPa, so it is doing much better at this point. However, the flows are also between 600 and 700 as opposed to 3,000 or north of that were earlier this year. The cleaning difficulties, what happens is you have to close down one filter, you have to shut one down to do a cleaning. So if you have a sustained flow for a longer duration, again, you have to shut one down to do the cleaning. So at that point, that's where we're running into difficulty. Like you said, typically, like since then, it's been fine. It's just in the higher peak flow rates that are yet to be tested, because really we can only test it in the spring season when the flows are the highest, because as I said, 600 previous or 600 currently to 3,500, like we need that volume of flow for X amount of days to try to duplicate that. We are working on ways that we can run on one train for a longer duration and pull water from other areas to add to that, just to get a simulated test that would be more accurate. And we are working with the consultant on that as well. In preparation for next year, what we're doing is all of our maintenance, inspection, and cleaning cycles, everything will be ramped up in January and be ready for the
this spring freshet in late March.
So I can make one more comment about the difficulties we experienced with the filters and bypasses, and that as of yet, we haven't been able to prove that the plant can actually meet that 3,500 number that we're looking to see. So staff are investigating how we can work with the consultant and the builder to go about ensuring that before we basically close out our project, that we have gotten proof that the plant does actually function as designed. So that's something that we're in the process of undertaking right now, and I'm sure we'll probably be back at some point with an update on that. But I can pass it back to Ashley, and we can talk about some of the awesome successes that we've seen over the last with the new plant. So,
Yes, it's not all just bad news with the sewage plant. Since its operation in late 2021 and 2022, we've seen improvement with our effluent quality. So it's important to note that when the ECA changed, there was a condition that our limits changed as well. So previous to 2018, our phosphorus limit was was 1 milligram per liter, and now it is 0.1 milligram per liter, and we've had no phosphorus exceedances since that change. We've also had no total suspended solids exceedances or E. coli exceedances. And previous to 2022 and 2023's operating year, E. coli was one of our #1 noncompliance events. So some good news there that we've seen reduction in that. I should note that we also have limits with respect to kilograms per day of how our phosphorus is being treated, as well as ammonia nitrogen. So with that new limit in place, it is 0.1 kilograms per day, and in 2022 we were 0.02 kilograms per day, and so far in 2023 we're 0.03 kilograms per day. So lots of good news there in regards to phosphorus. I think that's all I have, unless Deanna has anything else to comment on. Are
there any questions from Mayor and Council?
Perfect. Thank you so much. Great report. I love how you led with the bad and closed with the good. So thank you. So what we'll do now is we'll open it up to council for questions. And I'm going to start with Councillor Trim.
Turn my mic on. I went through all of this, and I won't claim that I understood it all, and I also won't claim that I remember it all. However, I got a kind of a sense after reading it, and I think you spoke to it at the end, that the plant may not be operating to design. You seem to have to do a lot of CIP cleaning. And the design of the plant, or the the recommendations wouldn't be for that much cleaning. And I'm just wondering, first of all, we don't know if the plant will perform as promised because of that, and how much extra work is this, and how much extra cost to the township is this, to be doing this much extra work. I've got 3 parts here. Can I go ahead or wait?
No, let's try and respond to one. It's complicated.
Okay.
So, yeah, you can redirect it.
Yeah.
Sure. So, can you actually say that again? Because I want to make sure I don't misspeak.
I'm just wondering, because it seems to be a lot of extra work to keep the filters clean. Is that costing us extra? Is that extra manpower, extra time? You know, this plant is supposed to be as efficient as possible, and it seems to be not that efficient. I may be getting the wrong impression.
I'll start, sorry. Yeah, so once the number of cleanings that was provided, it's bringing the pressures from 100 to 120 it was, down to what it is currently. I think we're running about 30, which is the average running. And then going forward, the operators will track what the pressures are going forward, and then reverting back to the manuals that were showing that have been done quarterly. So we'll maintain and hopefully done when the pressures go up, there'll be a cleaning done. So hopefully, we will maintain the whole year to determine what the actual lengths of time between cleanings. Maybe if Ashley can speak more to
that. So as we're monitoring currently, we're trying to establish a better baseline. And once like the flows start to increase higher, that's when we noticed a difference before. So this time we're going to be ready. As Lane alluded to, we were told prior that semi-annually or quarterly the cleanings had to be conducted, which were done by the contractor. So this year we're going to be much more proactive and make sure that, you know, we're on top of it at that time.
And I can speak to one other thing, cost. Luckily, I mean, the chemicals that are used to undertake these cleanings it's essentially bleach and citric acid, so not particularly expensive items. I think you're using about a drum per cleaning or more.
200 liters per cleaning per train.
And I mean, we all know about, in industrial qualities, it's probably cheaper, but a jug of bleach is $3 or $4 kind of thing. So it's not particularly expensive product. So Aqua will be providing us with invoices as they come in, as we tally up over we'll be able to get a better estimate on those costs once these cleans over the last couple of months have come in, and we can definitely include that as part of budgetary thing that we'll look at budgetary line item for planning next year, but not really anticipating that it's a huge number.
No, I don't believe it's going to be a huge number, no.
Okay, I don't know if that helps.
Good. I know you have 3. I'll give you one more before I move on to some other guys. We can come back to you if there's time.
In the report, it mentions infiltration of storm sewer water into the waste sewer water. And there's a recommendation that you try to find the source of that and mitigate that. And so I'm just wondering, do you know where it's coming from? And what plans do you have to reduce that in the future?
Previously, the township, I believe in 2019, did some manhole lining to reduce infiltration. And then going forward, providing the report, staff is recommending to do a master servicing plan, which would include flow testing to determine what areas of the village that flows are coming in. We believe that a lot of the extent is coming from sump pumps tied in. And during the high flow events, Aqua did go around and inspect manholes to see the flow rate. So we have a general sense, but going forward, master surfacing plan would definitely help with that.
Thank you. Good. I'm just going to go back. I missed the mover in the second here, so I'll give you first opportunity. So, Councillor Moore, do you have any questions?
Just one, and it has to do with CIP. I've talked to Lane, and now listening to this, he mentioned the same as you did. When it's time to clean, you shut one side down and then you clean one filter. At what point, after 8 hours, does it take to clean all so that we have a refresh of the system and not just one?
At this point, it's really hard to say. Like, it may take a few cleanings to bring it back down, but that's the issue that we've noticed. Like, as the prolonged flows are starting to rise, you have to shut down to do a cleaning. But then you're pushing the residual water that you have in the tanks is going through the opposite train. So it's a steady juggling act as it constantly, as the flows are increasing.
Okay, thank you.
Did you want to add something?
Yeah, I was wanted to add a little piece here. I guess the intention, like I made a comment in the report that we're going to prepare better for the spring next year. The problem is that at the start of this year, we started with pressures very high, and then we were battling trying to bring them down. The intention this year is, because we're much more cognizant of the problem, is to start as low as absolutely possible, nowhere near as high as we started. So cleaning lots ahead of time, so then when the flows start coming in and we see that sort of additive effect, we're not reaching that threshold where we can't keep up anymore. So that's part of the test that we're hoping that we can prove this, and within that starting early, starting low with the pressures, that when we do have to stop and clean, we're not trying to catch up. If you follow me, I don't know if that helped at all, Mike.
Sure, supplemental.
Just one more. So with this council sitting around this table, then where do we stand with the building contractor and turning over to Aqua? Is the contractor still in charge per se, or what's happening there?
So the plant has reached substantial completion, and then Aqua has been running the plant for approximately a year and a half, and with the baseline, which is our plant's builder, they're still on site, still doing deficiencies and any outstanding work. So that they have been involved in meetings with JP2G and ourselves and Aqua, battling this issue going, and then the intent is to have the baseline done in a few months from now.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Move over to my seconder, Councillor Olmsted.
Yeah, you're allowed to tell me this is a stupid question if you want, but is the old plant still operational, or is it decommissioned?
So the old plant, the original design was going to be included in the process, but during the ECA, process, it was determined that the original design was the effluent from the old plant would come back in just before, I believe that it was the filters and UV system, but through the ministry they provided that the flow from the old plant would have to go back to the start of the plant, which wouldn't provide any capacity. So it was determined that through the process that the old plant would not be used, and right now, and we're determining that we had JP2G determine what to do with the old plant. Through going forward, there were some challenges with the domestic washrooms, for example, that went into the old plant, so that's being transferred over. Then we'll be reporting back to council what our next steps with the old plant. Potentially, it could be used as a septic receiving station, potentially. Originally, Aqua and staff talked about it could be used as a buffer during high flows, but with the spring event, that the storage was not great enough. I'm not sure if Ashley wants to provide any information.
Yeah, I agree with Lane. Like the original talks were, the plant is still there. It's still operational if required. However, right now, of course, we are not currently using it. But the domestic water was going from the wastewater in, the restrooms and stuff. The domestic water was going into the existing clarifier, which now we have a plan to plumb that in over there. And, oh, frig, where is we going with that?
Storage?
Oh, the storage was only, a couple hundred cubic meters, so at 3,500 cubic meters, it was a drop in the bucket, so to speak.
Right. And listen, I was more or less just wondering if it was still operational, so I appreciate a lot of details. But I more or less wanted to know if we made a rash decision before we got the new one up and running. And it seemed like we haven't done anything, we haven't made a decision on the old plant at this point in time, which is good in my books. we have options down the road for various potential issues. So that's all I needed. Thank you.
And I'll open it to the other members of council. So, Councillor Bell.
Just a question about the Muskrat watershed. Is there any parallel testing that we're doing with this new plant now being operational and kind of the quality of the water in Muskrat Lake? Seeing whether we're seeing any changes as far as the nutrient loading that's going on surrounding the plant? Is that anything that we've considered or that we have any information on?
Unfortunately, I don't have any information other than the information from Aqua's report on what's coming out of the plant. I can't speak to any of the other potential inputs into the lake. I do know that that's something that is in the proposed official plan. There's something, anyways, I'm not sure. At this point in time, I have to speak to the Watershed Council if that's additional, if they're doing additional monitoring, but that's not something that the municipality is currently doing.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know if the new plant has had an effect in and around that area of the lake or in the lake in general. So I don't know if that's something that we could consider moving forward or if it's information that we can get from Watershed Council.
Yeah, two things I noted. First one was I'd rather have my delegation from the Muskrat Watershed Council after this presentation. So noted for next year. And Councillor Olmsted is our council member on that. So can I ask that you might see if they have any feedback on the quality of the lake at a later time?
I'll ask the guy sitting behind me, but yes, absolutely will. I can't really hear what you're saying, though.
Good. Well, we'll afford you the opportunity to talk to them and come back to council when appropriate. It's good. Good question. Thank you, Councillor Bell. Good. Any other questions? Before I come back to Councillor Trim for his third question, I want to make sure that I've... Good. All right, Councillor Trim, your floor.
Yes, in the report, I noted that the brewery waste caused some issues. And so staff spoke with the brewery, and they understood, and I guess they were trying to be cooperative, but there were still surprises ongoing. And in the report, it mentioned the possibility of a bylaw. And so I'm wondering if staff will be coming forward with something for us to consider so that there can be some regulation of this, and we'd have some of a way of having a better control. So I'm just wondering if that is something we can expect in the future.
Yes, that's definitely an intention of mine, is to bring forward a water and a wastewater bylaw, and that would definitely cover things such as limits on discharges, and it would also potentially cover language around tie-ins to sump pumps into storm versus sanitary. So there's a number of things that could be included in a bylaw that could help in this with the situation in general. So, yep.
No other questions or comments? So I just wanted to highlight, thank you so much. I mean, a complex report. I appreciate the 3 voices. It was great to hear feedback from, well, even 4 if I count Lane. But I think what you presented was great. As you can tell, it's a priority for council. Lots of questions, lots of digging into the detail, and I would encourage us to continue to do that, including the mitigation of the overflows and investigating the old system. The question that popped up when you were responding to Councillor Olmsted's inquiry, you said that ECA had limited that proposal. Is there mechanisms for us to go back and challenge that decision? Should we be going back and saying, you know, given the situation that we faced this past spring, wouldn't we be able to have that flow come in later on in the plant flow than what they had proposed? I think I haven't complicated it. Lane, do you want to?
Yeah, so going back to the original plant design was using the new plant and the old plant for treatment. But with after the ECA comments came back, there was no benefit of using the old plant, because they ministry wanted that the outflows would go back into the head of the plant for treatment, so it wouldn't provide any capacity to it. And then the plant was designed at the ECA capacity of 1,000 versus the old plant was 696. So the new plant was designed to meet the requirements set out in the ECA.
To be clear, there's no benefit for us to go back and say, can you reconsider inserting it later on in the process rather than the head?
I think not at this point. And how the plant was built was the changes that was recommended.
Good. Okay. Well, then I look forward to your recommendations on the old plant when that has an opportunity to come back to council. Good. Is there any other questions or comments from members of council? None. We'll call for a vote, and just a reminder that this is to receive the report for information purposes. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Excellent. We'll now move on to 10.3. Sorry. Thank you, Ashley and Kaylee. Appreciate you guys coming in. 10.3, which is our fire department structural hose replacement. The recommendation is that the council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the purchase of 1 3/4 Kraken EXO fire hose from Municipal Equipment in Maddock, Ontario. And I'm looking for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Tabbert, seconded by Councillor Moore. And this is going over to our chief.
Thank you. Just a brief background on this topic. There's money allotted in the 2023 budget to replace our outdated 1.5-inch structural fire hose. That's our attack hose that we primarily use for our firefighting activities, with newer 1 3/4 hose, which will help with nozzle reaction on our new nozzles that we put into service last year. So after the tenders were submitted, Municipal Equipment was the lowest price that met all the requirements of the tender. They also had a rather robust warranty. 10 years for all manufacturing defects, and lifetime for delamination, which we've run into recently with some of our older hose. So essentially we'd like to go ahead and purchase this hose as soon as possible. There are some supply chain issues, as pretty common these days, so I'll turn it over for any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions from council? Yes, Councillor Bell.
So it is just it's the 28,000 in total. We just kind of maxed that out to get as much hose as we could, essentially.
Yeah, that's correct. Which will provide us all the hose needed to replace our frontline pumper and pumper tankers with a small reserve capacity.
And what's the expected lifetime on this contingent of hose?
Currently, there's no time limit on how long we can use it, but my anticipation would be using it any time after 15 years. We're probably kind of pushing our luck a little bit, and that's some of the issues we've run into right now. Much of our hose is well beyond the 20-year mark, and the failure rate's quite high.
Good. Any other questions? Our two firefighters here. Yes, Councillor Moore.
Just out of curiosity, is this company willing to sign an agreement for X number of years? Years ago we could do that, but are they looking to do that now, or is this a one-time shot?
This tender was for a one-time purchase. I'd have to speak with Curtis about how exactly that would work moving forward.
It'd be nice if we could lock in for a year or two, given the way the prices of everything are going. So, just a thought.
I'll just, I know that there are initiatives, and the CAO was looking into it earlier, where procurement instruments for something as common as hose might be available from multiple municipalities. If we all need 1 3/4, why aren't we approaching the market and using that leverage? So there is initiatives. I think AMO leads the charge where possible, but I don't know if hose is included, but we'll leave it with them to consider. Good. The only question, sorry, if there's no other questions from members of council? None? Decommissioning of the old hose, just wanted to confirm that all of, as much as possible is going to be decommissioned?
That's correct. Much of it will be outright decommissioned. Others, a small portion will be kept in reserve, and some will be used on the tankers.
Good. Anything else? Call for a vote. All those in favor? And it's carried. Thank you, Fire Chief. Next item, appointing signing officers for banking purposes. So the recommendation is that the Council of Township of Whitewater Region approve a bylaw to appoint signing officers for banking purposes for the Township of Whitewater Region. A mover and a seconder, please. Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Trim. And to our Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is just a quick report, just to update our bylaw that already existed to repeal it and put a new bylaw to allow the addition of the CAO and the Deputy Mayor to be added to the list of assigning authorities. So with this bylaw, it would make it that on the staff side, the Treasurer, the Deputy Treasurer, and the CAO, one of them can sign on banking issues, and then on the council side, the mayor, the deputy mayor, or the chief or the council lead of finance and administration could sign. Any questions?
Perfect. Thank you. Any questions from members of council? Councillor Olmsted.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just a point of order. Deputy Mayor is moved the motion. She's also
named in it?
Just, yeah, named added to it. Just a point of order. I just want to be sure we get it right.
Can she move a motion that she's named in? If we're not sure, we'll call for another mover.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay, so we will err on the side of caution. So, Deputy Mayor, if you understand where I've decided on, so I'll call for another mover. Thank you, Councillor Tabbert. And the seconder was Councillor Trim. Good. Thank you. Is there any other questions or comments on this? Good. Call for a vote. All those in favor? Carried. Excellent. Next item is the Moxham Road culvert replacement. And just before we move on, I'll just note for the public that Councillor Bell has declared on this item and is leaving the room. So the recommendation before us is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region direct staff to include the culvert replacement on Moxham Road for consideration in the 2024 budget deliberations. A mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Olmsted. And this is going to Public Works.
Yeah, thank you. Carmen, if you don't mind going to the photos, sorry. Yeah, so in April, late April, staff was notified about a 22 100 millimeter culvert was collapsed on Moxham Road, which limited access to about 8 properties. As shown in the photos attached, it is at about 14 to about anywhere from 14 to 16 feet deep, and probably the one culvert here and also culvert on Sam's Road is one of the largest culverts within the township. Staff got quotes, 7 quotes, ranging from anywhere from 20,000 to 49,000 for the actual culvert, and staff have estimated that the repair in-house would cost anywhere from 30 to 35,000, which would include the culvert and any gravel for the culvert and any graveling to the road for access. The culvert is challenging. It is due to the location and the water course and the size. Sorry, if you go down, Karen, the location of the map shown attached. Moxham Road is listed as signed as a road not being maintained. In talking to the Township Legal Counsel, there's no actually designation for road not maintained, and we got some legal advice on that to status quo, which would open the township up to potential legal because we don't meet the minimum maintenance standard on it. Another option would be to close the road and the actual road would not be would be named on a map and it'd be removed. The road would still exist within the right of way. Sorry, and in the plan next steps that in the Public Works plan is to come back with a transportation bylaw showing all the roads within the township that are maintained, that are seasonally maintained, and these roads that are signed that are signed not maintained going forward. Any other questions? Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Carew. I'm going to go back to my mover and seconder for comments. First, Councillor Moore.
Yeah, the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot has come up since we discussed this last time. A lot of us were unaware of how much activity this road generated. Even though we said it was municipally not maintained, there's a lot of properties that access their property over this creek. And without this culvert, they can't get in. In cases, there's one farmer in particular can't get in to plant his fields, and I know there's another resident can't get in to get his firewood out for the winter. So, and that's only the ones that I've heard from. I haven't heard from the rest of them. I would like to see this culvert replaced as soon as possible to give our residents access. And that's all I have to say.
Good, okay. And seconder was Councillor Olmsted.
Yeah, I did speak earlier today with Mr. Bell, who spoke earlier. And I wasn't visualizing, just in the photos, I wasn't visualizing. I was kind of thinking, it was a 2-foot culvert at most. I don't even know how big is 2,200 millimeters. 7.5 feet. Yeah, that's a big structure. So I see both sides for sure that it's going to be quite a job to replace it. I guess my question is, in the words of the township, that it services a significant water, I'm looking for the under background. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the culvert services a significant permanent water course. So if we don't fix it, what's going to happen in the spring when we get the significant runoff? And where's all this? Can you go back to the picture where we see that right there? Yeah, the first one. So that's what it looks like now after this spring. What's going to look like after next spring? And where's all that material and cover going to be? And I think safety is probably paramount here as well. I know we can close the road, but how many guys or kids or whatever are going to rip down there on a 4-wheeler or whatever and come across that thing? So I have great concerns about just leaving it. I'd like to go and visit the location to actually see it for myself before we move forward with anything, I guess. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Olmsted. I'll go to Councillor Tappert next.
Yes, I did visit the site, and I have to admit I was quite surprised how deep it is. I don't know how it happened. Apparently the water in April. So, but regardless, if there was a house on the other side, this thing would have been fixed already, as far as I'm concerned. But there's not a house, so there's no concern. But we have a farmer who is losing $5,000. We have a homeowner who cannot heat their house without going to the bush. We don't know about the other ones. In the winter, I know I've walked to this quite a bit. And snowmobiles went up and down it. So I don't know. I don't think we can leave this. I really don't. It's too, the road closed sign is right at the culvert. So if you're coming up Moxham Road from Bennett Road and you're zipping along, I don't know if you'd be able to stop in time not to run into that, even though there is a little sign there that says road closed. Oh, I shouldn't say little, because it does go across the road. But I don't know about the other side if there's a sign, though. And that's where snowmobilers do come from the other side, too. There must be a way to get through. So regardless of the expense rate now, I mean, $35,000, I mean, we helped the flood victims, and they built in a floodplain, and we helped them without even thinking. And yet here we have a farmer and a homeowner who own the property, who pay taxes on this property, and we're saying, oh, well, you know what? Next year. No, for me, that's not acceptable. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. I'll just highlight that we're the ones who set the budget. So we're the ones telling him that he has to stay within his dollar limit. So just, if we want to change the budget, staff need that direction from us. So just so you're tracking that. Yes.
And yes, I would approve a budget like that, because I'm sorry. I don't even know about the flooding, how much it cost the township for the flooding. And I understand that we were the ones who gave, well, not this council, but we approved them building in a floodplain. But the floods are getting worse and worse. And are we going to have to keep putting more money into floods and telling our farmers on back roads that we're sorry, but our floodplains are more important? That's how I see it. And I'm very passionate about this, so I'll stop now.
No, it's good. Councillor Trim.
I have three, sort of related. First of all, I'd like to know the history of municipal maintenance on this road. Is there a history of municipal maintenance, by which I mean grading, gravel, brushing? Over time, is there a history? Secondly, who put the culvert in that's there now? And at last, why did it fail? This large culvert was perhaps too small, or it failed because of structural integrity, it was rusted. So there's my...
Mr. Cleary, you want to respond?
Yeah, thank you. So your first question, so the township has maintained this road previously. In the past, they've repaired this culvert in the past, and then also we've done good grading on the road and maintained the road. But I believe in 2018, 2019, the road was the signage was switched from road not maintained in winter to road not maintained. And I believe the culvert was installed originally, I believe, by township forces. But again, it was maintained, I think, by staff in the last 20 years.
Why do you think it failed?
I believe that it was collapsed by water, like by the force of water. It was collapsed. And the actual culvert appears to be not in good shape. Like it's rusted on the bottom, but it's not rusted out. But I believe it was just the fear the water force behind it collapsed the road. Sorry, I collapsed the culvert. Sorry.
Do you feel that if the culvert is replaced, it should be replaced by a larger diameter culvert?
Staff did review that. We look at alternatives, and the culvert was sized at one point when it was put in, and the stream up farther, is the same size, the crossing on Sam's Road. I believe in history the culvert has blown out previous, I guess, and township staff has fixed it. We could do a review of it, but a larger culvert would cost more.
Any other questions or comments? I'm going to go to the deputy mayor first. You already spoke, so deputy mayor.
Thank you. Can we get it as high as we can and take it on by the county? Can we get to that point?
It's a very good question. I assume we'd have to have it engineered to determine what the actual size was. And if it was larger than 3 meters, which potentially we could upload to the county, but if that's the direction that council wants us to do, we can definitely look at it.
I think it would be worthwhile if it is possible at all. I think it would be worthwhile taking a look at anyway. Because further to Councillor Trim comment, it looks like we have to go bigger anyway. So if we have to go bigger, let's go real big. If we can. Pardon me?
Bigger than 3 meters.
Bigger than, yeah.
Okay, is there any other comments or questions? Good, and Councillor Tabbert.
Following up on Deputy Mayor, if we go to the county, I don't want them to fluff this off. I mean, if we have to stay the same size so that we get it done this year, do it. But let's not fluff something off to the county and say, you know what, we need you guys to take it over, because I don't know how the county operates, but I don't want them to come back and say next year, because then we are stuck.
Okay, so one last comment, Councillor Trim.
Yeah, a comment, not a question. Yes, I'm would never judge the decision of a previous council with respect to this road. However, I do feel, for different reasons than Councillor Tabbert, that it doesn't seem fair to take away service that you've been providing, and you know, they probably didn't reduce the money we received from them. We're just not giving them the service that we used to give them. And I just don't think that's quite fair. And so for that reason, I would support replacing the culvert. And I would also support a suggestion that council revisit the budget and give direction to the Public Works Department to indicate whether or not this is possible, what they would have to do in order to make this possible for this year. Thank you.
Perfect.
If that was a motion, I'll second it.
Okay, I'm just going to break that down. So it went around there, but I'm sure the clerk's going to correct me here. But so from what I'm hearing, to make sure that that culvert existed in that road. It was put in there by the township at some point. We now have a road that we've designated municipally unsupported, unmaintained. But we don't have that transportation bylaw that was referenced earlier to define what that maintenance entails. We heard from the public today that has influenced a lot of our comments. Staff are coming back and saying this wasn't in the program. If you want to pay for it, we've got to plan it into the program for next year. So you're right. I think what we need now is we need a motion, if from what I'm hearing from everyone's comments, the recommendation on the table, the motion on the table, is not one that is supported. So we need to entertain either a motion to amend or a motion to postpone and ask staff to look at more information and come back to us. One of those two types of motions is what we need in order to address this. And I'll just put the comment about the county. I think in order to turn something over to the county, it has to be brought up to county standards before they even look at it. I don't know if they would consider a road we've designated municipally unmaintained, even for a second. We would have to make it a road before they would entertain that. So I would say, given this information, and given what Councillor Moore said, I'm going to go back to Councillor Trim and say, would you like to make a motion to amend the motion or postpone the motion?
Time is running out. in construction season and getting supplies. And so I would like to make a motion to amend the motion, please. To have the public works staff come back to council with a way that they can include the reconstruction of this, the replacement of this culvert and the rehabilitation of the road this construction season.
Good, and I'll come to staff in just a sec, because we'll get it on the table and then we'll tweak it. So the move is to include it in this year's, get staff to come back and include it in this year's construction schedule. Councilor Moore, you'd earlier indicated
I'm a seconder, yes.
you would second that motion. Just to make sure that we have the motion worded correctly, I'm going to ask staff for some input on it. It's on the table, so I'll turn it over to the CEO to see if he'd like to tweak the wording.
Yeah, so the motion to amend to direct staff to return to council with a report indicating it was the cost associated with the completion of work and how we would fund it in 2023? Is that my understanding? Okay. And that could come, I would expect, I'll direct it back to the manager of public works. It could come in September, and the works could be done in late September or November, I would expect, based on the existing public works program for this summer to redo some roads and gravel programs and all that. So just be cognizant as council that this is probably a fall project, and we can report back in September. In the interim, perhaps we could analyze a larger size culvert, and we may have to come back to council anyway for the acquisition of that culvert, because it may be over our delegated authority to approve a purchase in the $25,000 range. So that aligns with the intent of the motion. Yeah, so report in September, and the works in the fall, and I'll defer to, if you could, manager of public works, confirm that the works will be done in September or November. Thanks.
Thank you, Ivan. Yeah, definitely the work that would be done in-house. Conscious of the flows in the water course. When we get later in the year, that it will increase versus summertime. That it's a stream right now. The one thing that we do have pricing already that we could come back to council with for procurement.
Okay, so you're in agreement with what the CAO said? Good, okay. Mover and seconder, you're good? Okay, and what I'll do is I'll open it up for questions and comments. It goes to the mover first.
As this, the CAO said, that is more than reasonable, and I completely agree with that plan.
Good, and the seconder?
Just one concern. I know you discussed pricing already, but being construction season, any idea what the availability is of said culvert this year? Any idea?
So we asked that question. I believe it's about 30 days for the culvert.
Good. Do you want to comment to that?
Yeah, so I would say that if the purchase of the culvert falls within our sphere of
Delegated authority.
Delegated authority to purchase, we might purchase it in the next month or so, but we'll still report back to council so long as the size is appropriate and all that. So yeah, that's great.
Perfect. Good. And Councillor Tabbert.
We have a special meeting in July. Can we not have a report by then? I'm so afraid that come September, like Mr. Kluwer just said, that we're going to be overrun with water and we won't be able to fix it. I'd rather do it now when it's a little stream than a huge creek with water pouring out all over the place. And I mean, it even says here, because it's a remote location, we will require many staff hours of brushing and graveling. So we should be starting on this project now, not waiting until the end of September or October when it's gonna start raining and yes.
Good. So staff,
And I mean, certainly chime in if you want, Manager of Public Works, but I think certainly I would agree that perhaps some works can be done in the next month or two, the brushing and maybe some gravel loads to ensure access. But there is a pretty streamlined program in place for the staff of Public Works. I mean, we have to prepare a couple roads for the double surface treatment in the next few months. So, and they're already grading and they're doing a whole series of works. But I'll leave it to staff to try to achieve an earlier completion date, but certainly if council's given us direction to complete the works before the end of the year, we'll ensure it's done before the end of the year. The last thing I would note is the financial piece. So at the end of a year, generally you hope to be in a surplus for the fulsomeness of our financial situation. So certainly that's the expectation, and certainly that's where we've been in the last number of years. So this additional cost would likely be accommodated as part of that surplus, but we'll report back to council in September how we would fund it and give you an update on the project. Thanks.
good. And I just to be clear, the amended motion that is on the table speaks to including the culvert replacement on Moxham Road in the 2023 budget. So that's, staff would, if voted on, staff would be accomplishing it as within the program, as you see fit due to all the other constraints. It's just that you're briefing us back in September on funding or if it's outside delegated authority. That's the way the motion currently reads. Good? Any other questions, Councillor Tabbert? Yeah.
Not a question, just a comment. If we could have a road close signed at Bennett and Moxham and not just at the culvert, because I know a lot of people use that road, so it just makes me concerned that, believe it or not, the GPS shows for the large RVs to go down Moxham Road. I don't know why.
Good.
But then you have to get a tow truck in there and.
Good.
So, yeah.
Staff can take that, and if 511 is updated, if we can just follow all the necessary steps to make it as safe as possible. Good. Deputy Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Just one last comment. If we do have to go over and above your authority or the authority for this culvert, and we aren't back till September, then we lose another whole month or more ordering it. Like, I'm just concerned that if it goes over and above, that we can still somehow order this culvert without going through.
Like, you're suggesting we do a secretarial approval of an item,
Correct.
something to that effect, if
Just
that's
a
possible?
one-time off?
Maybe that's something staff can consider as an option. CAO?
Certainly, we did that very recently with the 3/4 ton to delegate the authority to the CAO to make an acquisition greater than 25,000. So it is 25,000. I think the lowest price culvert was in the range of about 20,000 and change, inclusive of HST, perhaps. But either way, I think I mean, at the discretion of council, you could certainly delegate that authority to me specific to this culvert over the next couple months.
Perfect. So, Deputy Mayor, just to be clear, are you suggesting an amendment to the amendment?
Well, I'm just,
Yes, you are, I think.
yes, I am. Yes, I am. Yes.
Okay, so would you like to include a dollar figure? As we did with the 3/4 ton?
Yeah, I don't know what that dollar figure would be. It's
Could
not.
staff suggest a figure, please?
Could you?
It's looking like we're good. We have the estimate in front of us, so it's just over $20,000. So we as managers and the CAO have delegated authority to approve that, so long as it's the motion that's before you gets passed, that you're
Understood.
proceeding with this work.
Good, it's still your discretion? Are you fine?
As long as we can still get it without, yes.
Perfect.
That's
Okay.
fine, as long as we can
So
proceed,
you're
regardless of
withdrawing-
the price.
Withdrawing your motion.
Well, I'm just saying that if it goes over $25,000, I don't want to do that.
Do you want to put that motion forward now, then?
I would like to just put it at one time for the CAO
Up
to
to-
approve it.
up to-
Let's go up to $30,000. Just in case.
There you go.
How's that
Okay,
sound?
can you amend that? So we're just gonna give the clerk a second, if everybody just can give her a minute to reword the motion, the new amendment. We'll read it out and we'll ask for a seconder, okay? I'm trying to make sure that we follow the right process. Everybody gets a chance to do this correctly. We should have given Councillor Bell some work to do. Write a report.
You got it, Carmen? You need a hand, or you got it?
I think I got it.
Good. And I'll get you to read it out, please.
So that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region directs staff to include the culvert replacement on Moxham Road in the 2023 budget, excuse me, with the allowance of the CAO delegated authority for up to $30,000 for a culvert. Sorry. And how it will be funded, and report back into September.
Good. It provides the intent. We can clean up, oh, I just hit a chord, sorry.
No.
She can clean up the words, but okay. I need a seconder for our amendment to our amendment, please. Councillor Tabbert, is there any discussion on the amendment to the amendment? No? Are we in, if there's none, I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor of the amendment to the amendment? Which encompasses the original? It's all. Do I have to do a second vote on the original amendment?
No.
Okay, motion is carried. Thank you for the debate on this. Good? All right.
So
move on to-
will the record show then that the original amendment was defeated, or what will it show?
No, because just like the very first motion was amended, and it just ceases to exist when the
It's
amendment
replaced
is.
by.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. Good, and we'll just note Councillor Bell has rejoined us at the completion of that vote. Item 10.6, as a tender for a reversible plow tandem truck, the recommendation is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the award of tender 2023-01 to Francis Canada Truck Incorporated for the purchase of a 2024 Freightliner 114 SD Plus at a cost of $377,320.99, inclusive of non-refundable HST. Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Trim. Manager Public Works, please.
Yeah, thank you, and I'll be quick for time constraint. So tender was tendered and closed on May 18th. 2 bids were received with less than $600, both for a Freightliner 114 SD Plus. The lowest bid did not meet the minimum requirement and the warranty requirements, and staff are recommending to go with the second bidder. Note that the fleet consists of 8 tandem trucks and one single axle plow truck. And we also have 1 spare tandem in the fleet for breakdowns. With this purchase, it will replace truck 2024, which is a 2009 Sterling, and that truck will move from a primary to a secondary or backup plow truck, and then truck 22 will be deemed surplus. Just note that the delivery will be April of 2024. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crew. And mover, any questions?
None, thank you.
Seconder? Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? Yes, Councillor Olmsted.
Yeah, just quickly, and did I miss where, what the amount of the budget was? I see the cost of the truck.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, so the 2022 capital budget committed $100,000 from taxation towards the tandem plow truck, and the remaining would be funded in 2024 budget.
Gotcha. And we'll receive this new truck when? 24?
In 2024.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions? So clearly, we're already starting to spend next year's money. Okay, no questions, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? And it's carried. Thank you. Next item is a tile drain loan. Recommendation is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve a tile drain loan application from James B. Bowman in the amount of $50,000 for approximately 19 hectares at 1605 Kerr Line. And this is, oh, sorry, yes. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Olmsted, Councillor Moore, and this is going to our clerk. Thank you.
So we've seen a few of these before over the years. We have a program with the province that we can lend up to 75% of the tile drain project. Mr. Bowman is asking for, well, the total project is $76,000, so he's asking for $50,000, which I believe is just under the 75%. We are allowed to borrow up to $3,000 or $300,000, and that was through a bylaw. We have a total of 9 active tile drain loans with an outstanding principal of approximately $58,000. It still leaves us with a borrowing balance of $241,000. So if we approve this loan of $50,000, there'll still be money for any loans that come forward or any applications that come forward. Once you approve this, I do notify Mr. Bowman to let him know that he's good to go. He will do the work, provide us with our invoices. We do up a generator, which is, we enter all the information to a generator, which then is passed by bylaw once it's all approved. If there's any questions.
Any questions from council?
Straightforward.
No, an excellent opportunity for us to invest in our agricultural sector and an excellent way for them to access funds easily and quickly. If there's no other comments, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, clerk. Next item, road assumption and renaming bylaw. Recommendation is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region pass a bylaw to accept, assume, and dedicate as public highway the lands described in the bylaw and rename the subject lands as Zack View Drive. A mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Olmsted, seconded by Deputy Mayor. And this one is to our planner, Mrs. Benzie.
Okay, thank you. So this is another update on a development that has been long in the making, over 4 decades, I think now. I'm not going to go through all that history. We'd be here all night and more, but it is presented in detail in the attachments that have been provided with the report. So the critical issue with this old plan of subdivision, which was approved by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs back in 1982, was that the lots, so all those little zeros over there, the lots were created, but there was no legal access that was created to go alongside with them. So they had no way to get to, if you just scroll down there, Bromley line. So there's a private road that exists, and that's Morgan's Trail, but those lots did not have legal access to that. So a couple years ago, there was a lot of work that was done by township staff and the applicant to determine what the most appropriate way forward was. And in 2020, there was a resolution, it was confirmed that the township would take ownership of Morgan's Trail, that private road, and assume it, as well as Molloy Bay Drive, and an unopened road allowance to ensure that all those lots, as well as the lots kind of to the left, have legal access. So that was done early in 2020, and at the same time, council supported a resolution to have the township enter into a subdivision agreement, a new subdivision agreement, and a private road agreement with the applicant, and have those registered on title of the lots, and that was done in June of 2020. So since then, there had been some negotiation over the subdivision and the private road agreement, and the applicant, James W. LaPointe Motor Holdings, Inc., has been working with JP2G consultants on making sure that Morgan's Trail has been built to township standards. So on April 28th of this year, JP2G notified us that all the deficiencies that had been previously addressed were addressed. and that all works had been done in accordance with the approved plans and construction practices. Our manager of public works conducted a site visit with JP2G on June 1st and confirmed that the works are now acceptable. So with this confirmation from Public Works, the township is now prepared to assume ownership and maintenance of the whole road. And this proposed bylaw today will provide the township with the authority to do so. And due to some previous confusion with the name of the road, I believe there's another Morglan's Trail, similar road like that in the township. We received a request from the developer to rename the whole road to Zach View Drive. So this request was circulated to the County of Renfrew to ensure that it meets their 911 policies, and the county confirmed that this name is acceptable. So staff are also supportive of the change. And the renaming of the road is also included in the assumption bylaw today. And just in terms of next steps, so the proponent will register the bylaw to assume, dedicate, and rename the road. And this actually concludes the proponent's obligation to the subdivision and private road agreement. And then following registration, the township would be positioned to release the financial securities that are held for the site works. And that concludes my whirlwind presentation on Malloy Bay subdivision.
Thank you. Good, I've lost who my mover was.
Councilor Olmsted.
Councillor Olmsted, you're up first.
Yeah, I have no questions, just maybe two comments. I do know that the road naming means a tremendous amount to the owner of the development. I won't get into the particulars of it, but I know it has tremendous value to him. Secondly, if anybody hasn't been down this road, go down that road and see how a road is to be built. This is probably one of the best built roads that I've encountered in any township. I don't know what it cost the developer, but it's almost like a highway down that road. So hats off to, I don't know who built it for him, but it is just a tremendous, tremendous road. Thank you.
My seconder?
Deputy Mayor.
Deputy Mayor.
I will just echo that we have cattle down that road, so we travel it a lot, and it is absolutely what you said. It's just like a highway down there, so it's excellent. And I certainly support this 100% for sure. Thank you.
Any other comments from council? Councillor Bell?
So just a quick question, maybe I missed something, but you said that there was no legal access to these properties that were in this bay, but there was a private road that serviced what? So there was a private road there before, but it didn't go to any of these lots, or it only went to one of these lots, or how did that?
Yeah, so before there was a plan of subdivision, there was actually an application for consent back in the 1970s. And so it was kind of for the bigger L-shaped parcel. And that application for consent included an application for the right-of-way. But back in the day, the access to the right-of-way was actually never legally given to the lots. So the road itself was always there, like the physical infrastructure, so people were using it, but access to it was never properly registered on title when the plan of subdivision was approved by the province.
So the difference between this particular instance and a bunch of the other private roads that service a number of different houses that the township has really no intent on assuming, the difference is that there is legal access to all these other properties, but this one in particular just didn't have that access. So the best way forward was to assume that that's the background there. Okay.
Exactly. There's the lots just to the left in the diagram that had been created long ago as well, and they didn't have legal access either. So I think at some point back when the original discussions were being had, it was one option would be to keep it as a private road, but at the time it was just agreed that it makes most sense to have it a public road, and same with, so some of the lots, it's hard to see in that picture, but they actually front on an unopened road allowance as well. So making it a full road gives those lots appropriate access too.
But, okay, so I just want to confirm though that, like, any of these subdivisions that we have in the township right now that are serviced by private roads, it's not the intent that we, or the township assumes control over those roads. This is just one very specific case where there was some legal implications, and is that correct?
So any developer has the authority in our official plan to request us to consider taking over a road. They would have to bring it up to our standard before we could consider it, or as a condition of us considering it. So anybody can. Most development doesn't because of the significant cost, and that's where we lead to the private road situation. This one is a history, and a number of us were here when this was discussed. At the time, in the last term of council, it was deemed the most appropriate way to clean up the 1982 subdivision application that wasn't all-inclusive. So I don't want to say an exception, but that was the way it was approached at the time. Good? Does that satisfy? Good. Councillor Bell. Abbott, please.
So if I look at this map, I see that there are 6 properties that are on the unopened road allowance. So are we going to build Malloy Drive to go on the unopened road allowance to give them access? Or how does that work?
Planner, do you want to?
Yep, I can take that. So with the passing of this bylaw, it will be, and the whole thing, it won't be separate names. It'll all be called Zachview Drive. But yes, it includes that unopened road allowance.
It's labeled unopened road allowance. It's a full road.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's all the way.
Okay.
All of those lots.
Okay.
Yeah. Good. Councillor Trim.
Yes, back to, if I may, to Councillor Bell's concern. I see a difference. Our mayor lives on a private road, and this isn't a requirement for Clem Trail because there's no plan of subdivision in there. The difference is a plan of subdivision. As soon as you do a plan of subdivision, you need to have access to a municipal road, I believe.
Not in every case. But CAO, do you want to comment?
Yeah, no, I would just add that, yeah, I mean, the reality is that we have private roads that exist, and the lots created on those private roads were by severance or consent. I would value that, to some degree, a little bit different than a plan of subdivision. I mean, here it dates back to 1982. It predates certainly my employment here. So this was a solution forward, and the developer was prepared to do the improvements to our standards. So that's not often the case with private roads, and so in this case, we afforded him the opportunity to upgrade it. He did post securities, he did full detailed design with engineers, so there's a lot of costs associated with that, and he's met our standards, so it's great. Yeah.
Good. Discussion offline on roads, but it's good. Councillor Moore.
So what happens to the people at the end of Morgan's Trail that live on the left? They used to use that trail and call up Morglan's, and that's where they live permanently. So do they have to come up with a trail now to name themselves, or how is that going to work now?
Planner.
Yes, I'll just confirm with my colleagues. So that little section that will go off of Zachview Drive, it's sort of brown, that is going to be continued to stay Morglan's Trail. It's the rest of it. And that is a private road. So those lots, they actually had legal access over that property where that portion of the road is, but they didn't have legal access over the properties to the south. Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of interesting things that happened back in the day. And this really fixes a lot of previous problems.
That actually came up last council when they were trying to fix and get access and all that stuff. So I was just curious for them, landowners. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you. Next item. Delegations at the AMO conference this summer that Council of Township Whitewater Region receive this report for information purposes as it relates to the delegation requests at the AMO conference to be held August 20th to 23rd, 2023. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Tabbert, Councillor Trim, and CAO.
Yeah, thanks so much. So this is just a quick summary report to the members of council with respect to our delegation submissions for the AMO conference that's scheduled for August 20th to 23rd. So at the AMO conference, just like the Roma conference, townships and municipalities are able to submit a request to meet with ministers for the different provincial departments. So we've submitted 6 in total to different ministries, one of which would be the Minister of Seniors and Accessibility, relating to our continued seniors program, and to obtain some annualized funding for that. The Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs to examine any opportunities to support the development of anaerobic digesters for both nutrient management and energy production. The Solicitor General, that's with respect to the detachment board. So we're currently serving to some degree on 2 detachment boards, and we want to, the province is changing that, and we want to get an update on that. But we also want to speak to them with respect to dog kennels and their responsibilities and roles with respect to the welfare of animals, and how do we differentiate our roles. The Minister of Mines with respect to the lands on Magnesium Road, the former Teminko lands. So we'd like to discuss that with them and opportunities for redevelopment of those lands. And lastly, the President of the Treasury Board, who also deals with emergency management. So just to get some sense of provincial opportunities for mitigation measures for flooding. So a lot of the funding comes from the federal level, and we'd like to get a sense of what's being offered provincially. So there wasn't 6, I guess there's 5. So I will be in attendance. I understand that Mayor Nicholson will also be in attendance, among other members of council. I think Councillor Trim and Councillor Tabbert. So certainly it's exciting to speak to these ministers and or their assistants. So it's we're looking forward to this. Thanks so much.
Okay, Councillor Tappert, any questions or comments? Good. Councillor Trim? Good. Any comments or questions from other members of council? Good. The only thing I'd mention is as we continue to develop and you think of areas that may suit a delegation at Roma next year, now it's always the right time to throw that idea out there, let it percolate, to see how we might be able to take advantage of these opportunities. So it's open to all members of council. Good. If there's no other questions, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Next item, 2023-2024 ICE operations. The recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region directs staff to 1, operate 1 facility for the 2023-2024 ICE season. 2, bring a report on September 20th, 2023 if a second ICE facility is required to accommodate anticipated demand. And 3, position all 2023 arena surplus on a capital reinvestment reserve specific to future arena operations. A mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Bell, seconded by Councillor Trim. And CAO.
Yeah, thanks so much. So this report is a follow-up to my report that was brought forward to council on May 17th. That was a detailed report, technical report with respect to the availability, demands, operational cost, operational human resources, and a whole variety of things. At that meeting, council had given direction to staff that we engage with different organizations, our recreation associations, among others. So the mayor and myself and Councillor Lead Mark Bell led those discussions over the last 3 weeks, and I've summarized that in the report. So I'll skip to that, if you will, the engagement section. Essentially, we met with the 3 rec associations, the Beachburg Agricultural Society, landowners of the Beachburg Arena. We've met virtually with the town of Renfrew staff to get a sense of potential impacts and opening dates for the town of Renfrew second ice pad. I held 2 phone calls, one with the Ringette Association and the Aces. So that was 2 of the 3 independent competitive hockey organizations. I spoke to Our Lady of Grace representative today, and in fact we met with Mr. Punt, Kirby Punt, who's the Foresters Falls Rec Association lead. We met with him today, in fact. So to summarize the engagement, and I'll gladly have Councillor Bell and Mayor Nicholson support the discussion around the engagement piece, but essentially the impact we would anticipate would be with respect to in the sense of any closures or reduction from 2 facilities to 1 would be the free and sponsored public skating. So free public skating, the township led that charge last year quite a bit. It was quite successful, so there'll certainly be some impacts there. The Beachburg Agricultural Society holds 2 events. One is the fair. They use the Beachburg Arena for the fair. Should be no impact there, but they also had a winter festival where they had public skating, so impacts there. Potential loss in demand, we anticipate that just based on this level of engagement, a loss of about 180 hours of prime time ice. So our prime time use was 1,769 hours. So we anticipate a loss of 180. However, we will engage with the users, the actual muskrat miner and all the different users over the next 2 months. So with that staff level engagement with their allocation staff, we're going to get a better sense of the demand for this upcoming season. So that's why the motion before council is presented, that we'd report back in September following that engagement. But based on conversations, I think that there's a potential loss of demand. Some groups are saying more, some groups are saying there'll be a loss. So certainly there's a whole series of future interests, whether that's converting our existing facilities to accommodate other uses, basketball and the like. Certainly there was indication that these associations utilize our grants, so we do provide a recreation grant system, and that's being utilized. And also they utilize in some instances our calendar and our social media feeds to inform the public. Notable remarks, the pandemic has certainly affected the ice users, probably at the higher age groups. But there is a notable increase in younger age groups using our arena facilities. So back to the report from May 17th, it indicated that we had 1,769 hours of prime time use. One facility can accommodate 1,624 hours of prime time use, so that would be a utilization rate of prime time at 109%. So that's just a quick summary from that. So the recommendation before council is based on this engagement. So staff are recommending that we do proceed with 1 operating ice facility for the 2023-2024 season, and subject to the consultation with the users through July and August, we return to council on September 20th or earlier, and determine whether or not a second ice facility is required. So,
CAO, can I interrupt you there?
Yeah.
Just to pause for a second. Noting the time, I need a motion for us to extend our regular council meeting from 7:45 to 8:15 p.m. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Olmsted, seconded by Deputy Mayor. And all those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you, CAO. Please continue.
Thanks so much. So when we come back to council on September 20th, that'll afford us sufficient time, if the decision is to move with a second facility, to get the ice made available in Westmeath. So the staff are recommending that we commence operations at the Cobden Arena, traditionally as we have, September 1st or early September, and make the first available ice September 15th, and come back on September 20th. And if council chooses if there's a need for it and council decides to go with a second facility, we could commence operations in Westmeath sort of mid-October range. So that would sort of be the recommendation from staff at this stage, at this time frame. At this time, just highlighting a few other things. So there's some strategic reports. There's the council's strategic plan. There's the most recent council strategic direction for your term of council. So I've highlighted a few policies there. There's been a number of strategic reports around Parks and Rec in the last 4 or 5 years since we've taken ownership of the operation of these ice facilities. So there's the Parks and Recreation Operational Review. There's the Recreation Master Plan from 2019. There's also the Westmeath Recreation Task Force report. So I've summarized a few points from those reports for the members of council, but ultimately it lends itself to say that we're probably over the short to medium term looking at reducing our ice facilities. I'll lastly note the financial implications. A little bit difficult to estimate potential savings because, you know, we're partway through an ice season. You know, January to March has occurred, and we had ice facilities operating. Through that time, we generated $112,000 of revenue. However, the expense for the two facilities, Westmeath and Cobden, through January to March, was $154,000. So we've sort of, so far this year, we're at a deficit of $42,000. So projecting that into this fall, September to December, we anticipate a total surplus of $116,000. Within that is a operating savings of $175,000, less the loss of projected revenue of about $60,000. And then also accommodating that January to March deficit of $42,000. So with that being said, we anticipate that there would be ultimately additional savings when we look at it as a full ice season. So as we move into 2024, if we go with one facility, the savings will be greater than $117,000. Next steps, so we need to recruit for our superintendent, who has now retired. He's working with us through the summer as a transition period. And we also have an operator who will be on leave this fall. So next steps over the next couple months is to recruit staff and then engage with the users. So that's the immediate next steps. And then, as you're aware, in the motion, it's to come back to council in September. So glad to answer any questions from council. Thanks so much.
Thank you, CAO. And I'll hand it over to the mover for first comments.
Yeah, no questions because we've been in discussions the last couple weeks, lots about this. So just want to thank you for all your time. You put in a lot of time and effort behind the scenes, talking to all the different rec associations and all the parties involved whenever it comes to the ice operations. I think the big keys here are that we have, it's not just 2 facilities, but we have 3 facilities basically with a lot of failing infrastructure in it that needs some major capital reinvestment into the future. So we basically have to make a decision as to what we want our ice operations to look like. Obviously, the demand has been falling, and it looks like that's going to increase with the opening of Mattaway. We've had that discussion with the opening of the new ice pad there, and there's multiple teams that are going to be probably transitioning either most of their ice time or a lot or all their ice time over to that new Renfrew ice pad. So that's going to hurt our demand. And then, of course, that's going to hurt our revenue. And whenever we were operating at 56% last year of prime time, I think the recommendation here makes a lot of sense. I think it's kind of the responsible way forward to maximize the taxpayer's dollar to make sure we're not wasting any of that needlessly. So I think I like the piece too. If the demand calls for it, we do have that option to open Westmeath at a later date. So to keep that open, if demand calls for it in September, I think that's a good piece to this. But I support a lot of what was recommended in this report, and just again, thank you for all the work behind the scenes.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. And our seconder, Councillor Trim.
Yes, again, I would like to say that an awful lot of work has been done, and this is a very emotional topic for people who've worked their whole lives making these facilities a reality. I just would like to know, not at this moment because it'd be hard to do, but I would like to know what would trigger the the decision to open Westmeath in October, say? Like, what would be the trigger? Like, what if the community asks me, what do we have to do? What could we do to get this facility open in October? I would like to get back to them with some strategies or not strategies, but what the expectation from staff would be. I think there are going to be people who would want that to happen and would like to know what they have to do to make it happen. And so I'd like to have a general sense of that, if it's possible. It may not be something that I can get this evening, but it's something that I would like to know. Might be helpful in the community.
CAO, do you want to offer any insight?
Yeah, I would say that once we get a sense from the users of the demand and impacts with one facility, we would ultimately determine the potential use of a second facility, whether that's all of a Sunday or a block of time on a certain day of the week. Certainly what we want to try to avoid is the single bookings of an hour and a half or an hour during a weekday, because we have staff that need to attend before the ice and after, and we're required to give them a minimum number of hours. So, and recognizing that they're away from their families in the evening, trying to accommodate this. But I would say that the report that will come back will try to anticipate the demand for a second facility, and at the same time try to assess the cost associated with that. So I would expect that the report to come forward is, if there's enough demand, we might generate this much revenue, but it'll cost us this, and there might be a net loss, but council could decide that they're ready to absorb that net loss to support additional ice, perhaps.
Yeah, thank you, CEO. I just add that right now, any surpluses we would realize by this recommendation would put into that reserve for long-term replacement. If there is a need for a second facility come October, we would be reducing those funds for future expenditures in order to satisfy that demand. So us, council, would have to weigh off, as the CAO said, the demand, the costs, and the benefit to the community, both now and into the future. So it's going to be another decision in September. Good. And open to other members of council. So Councillor Olmsted.
Yeah, as Councillor Trim said, this is one of probably the most emotional decisions we've had to come to since my term, 9 years on council. Really, hoping this day would never come. And I know there's a bit of a sentiment of the township took over the facilities and now you're closing facilities. I can tell you that the township made a big commitment back in 2015, I believe. 2017, sorry. And really delayed the inevitable. I know that speaking to some of the people on the boards back then, they were very thankful the township came along and helped them out, and they were ready basically to close the doors then. They couldn't operate, they couldn't continue on. So I'd just like to say that I think we delayed, we stayed open as long as we could. The tipping point really is Mattaway coming along, and they're taking half of our primetime users. I've spoken to several people over the last month in minor hockey programs, and I don't think we fully know what the impact's going to be yet. As the CAO said, we're going to know by September, October, but there's a lot of ice time that we've previously held moving to Renfrew. I can tell you personally, I've played Sunday morning hockey in Beachburg, got moved to Westmeath, and we'd go and play on a Sunday morning at 10 o'clock in the morning, and that was the only ice time, 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and no more ice the rest of the day on a Sunday. Prime time, the entire Sunday, until maybe a public skating for an hour at night. So just not feasible. And to Councillor Trim's remarks about what would take to keep or reopen Westmeath, it's simply demand. You got to have users. The taxpayers didn't like the 9% tax increase that went through this year. We're continuing to subsidize these arenas. If they didn't like a 9% with no users, how are you going to like it next year when we've got to come back and ask for more and we're losing? My screen shut down on me, but if we keep them open with $400,000, we're going to lose. And we're just keeping asking the taxpayer to keep kicking in, but it's got to stop. So I believe this is the right decision at this time. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Olmsted. Any other comments? Councillor Moore.
Just one, I totally understand what's going on. The writing's been on the wall for years. But nonetheless, Beachbrig is sitting there. So are we still going to allow rentals for pickleball and ball hockey once renovations are complete from the latest flood? Is that the plan?
I would say that we will, yeah. So the slab would be available for rent if there's no ice operations. That's correct, yes. For rent, whether it's pickleball or ball hockey, whatever it may be. Yeah.
But any dates yet when construction is going to be finished? Like they've been working on it a while.
As I understand it, it should be complete, as I understand it. The last I heard was they were doing drywall work, so that's indication that it's almost done.
So is the fair board going to be able to use it?
Yes, most certainly, yes.
Okay, bonus. Thank you.
Any other members of council? No. And as I said in my opening remarks, council now needs to take a look at what that vision is. What are we building for 20 years from now? And how do we shape that budgeting, those policies, those aspects from a recreation and a culture perspective for the community? We're not at that point right now, and you could see we tapped the CAO to work specifically on this to get us to where we are now. We're going to have to include the pathway to create that vision has to be something we have to consider. And to me, that's something I'm leaning on Councillor Bell pretty hard on as our lead for rec to say what steps do we want to take next and how do we achieve those steps. So we'll go from there. All right. If there's no other comments, questions, I'll call for a vote. And all those in favor? Motion is carried. Next item, seasonal alternative hours of operation, a pilot program. So the recommendation is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve a pilot program for seasonal alternative hours of operation from July 9th to October 7th, 2023, and direct the CAO to provide a summary report in November. A mover and a seconder, please. Moved by our Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Tabbert. And CAO, you're going to speak to this one?
Yeah, thanks so much. So what we have before council is a recommendation from myself, the CAO, and the leadership team, which includes the managers and supervisors of the township, to move forward with a pilot program, so what we'll call summer hours or seasonal alternative hours of operation. So summer hours. So to extend that over the next 3 months, so July 9th, which is after the statutory holiday of July 1st, which extends to the Monday, to October 7th. So our pay and benefit policy is essentially the policy that's in play here, if you will. It establishes our office hours of work, our hours of work, our overtime, and other benefits that are given to staff. As part of the budget deliberations, council will remember that there is a review that was budgeted for employee retention program, or sort of a program to support our employees. So that will occur. I'm working with the County of Renfrew to commence that, but that will only happen in about Q3 of 2023 of this year. So we did receive a request. It came from the Public Works staff, and this is a request I think they've submitted to through the manager, through the superintendent, through the manager to the CAO for the last number of years. And I feel that it's something that we need to examine as a whole, as a corporation. And I also investigated with the team, with the leadership team, and there is other interest in other departments. So the pay and benefit policy establishes the hours of our operations. For one, it's our administration building. We're open here at the office 8:30 till 4. So our hours in the office here, 35 hours a week, it aligns with that with a short break for lunch. And the municipal garage operates from 7 till 3. So just as a key point, and I'll mention it now, is that for this pilot program, I am not recommending that we change the office hours. The public understand what our hours are. To change it for 3 months and then come in November and try to change it back might, not necessarily confuse the public, but I prefer to keep the hours of operation for our administrative building for this pilot program, and we could examine extended hours if we decide to move forward with this next year. So extended hours may be starting at 7, so allowing the residents to come deal with municipal functions or matters earlier in the morning or later in the evening. So that provides a benefit to the residents, but we'd examine that in future years if we proceed. Currently, most of the office staff run a 35-hour week. And the Public Works or Transportation Services and Parks and Rec run a 40-hour week. So what that would mean for Public Works is that they would want to work 4 10-hour shifts. So that would be Monday to Thursday. They would work 10-hour shifts. And then for Parks and Rec, it's a little bit trickier because some of them, they work on a sort of a schedule where some of them are working daytime, others are working in the evening, some of them are working on the weekend. So I'll have to connect with them again to try to see if we could balance it. But this summer hour thing might not work for everybody, and there's no requirement for the corporation to provide that benefit to everybody. We could do it where we can. The next piece highlights that the supervisor ensures that employees are working their required hours. So if it's 10 hours, well, it's 10 hours. It's not 9.5. And then an example here in the office of what a summer hour thing would look like. So through teams of 2 or 4, they would alternate sort of a Monday and a Friday off. So they're currently office staff work 7 hours through the day, the 8:30 till 4. And then what they would move to is an extended day to 8.75 hours. They'd work 4 days, they'd have 1 day off that week. So we've discussed it with some of the departments here. Some of them have interest and they would just alternate their days off. There would always be coverage. So for example, you take our CBO, you take our inspector, these are 2 building people. One would be off Monday, one would be off Friday. So there'd always be coverage in that way. So my recommendation before council, I've indicated in here a few reasons for that. So as an employer, we're trying to ensure that the work, personal, and family life is balanced. Providing extended hours and days and additional days off supports that. Further to that, in discussions with our superintendent of Public Works, he's indicated that there could be some efficiencies with the decreased commuting of the staff to the project site. So, for example, if they're working on Moxham Road, they could work for 10 hours in that day and not just the 8 hours and then come back to the shop. In the office here, there'd be some tranquility time. So the office is pretty busy, so you're getting calls and all that. So you'd anticipate that if you work beyond 4 o'clock, it might be a bit quieter in here and you could focus on reports. So there's some advantages to that. So before council, this is being recommended by the leadership team and the CAO as a trial period. So the next steps, we would communicate this with staff, clearly delineating that this is a trial period, pilot program, and there's no commitments that this would be pursued in any subsequent year. Report back in November. We try to quantify the impacts. Operationally, in some instances, it's a little bit difficult. But we'll try to quantify that to council. Any financial implications is pretty easily trackable, but trying to track calls about the grass at the here's not being cut or this work's not getting done is a bit more difficult. But we'll try to summarize that for council. So, looking for council's concurrence on this, and glad to answer any questions. Thanks so much.
Up first, mover.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Very well thought through here, CAO Burton, for sure. I think it's something worth certainly entertaining take a look at it, see how it could work for us. I know there are other municipalities who are currently doing it, and I think it's working well for them. So I think, you know, to me, it is like a life-work balance for sure. And I think if, you know, we've got to, as a council, try to do everything we can to maintain the staff we have. And I think this is just another way of possibly, you know, continuing with that, helping them, working with them, and I think just an opportunity for us to be able to try and see where we can do that for them. Anyway, I think I'm willing to try it. It's a 3-month period. We'll revisit it, take another look at it, and see where we end up with it. But I think for the most part, I think it could work and work well. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Tabbert, you were my seconder.
Does this include management staff as well? Sometimes I get confused because you say staff and then management isn't included in something, so I'm just curious as to if this is management as well.
Yeah, we would extend this to the managers and supervisors. I know that some of us already work some flexible hours just by virtue of our needs, but we would extend this to managers and supervisors as well.
Any other questions or comments from other members of council? Councillor Olmsted.
Yeah, I suspect managers probably work more than 10 hours a day now anyway. No, I'm more of a traditionalist, so it kind of goes against me, my mind thinking working 4 days. But I'm willing certainly to give it a try. And I would say to the staff, the proof would be show us that you get more work done. And I think we'd make this a long-term priority. So the proof will be in the pudding, I guess, in terms of the efficiencies at the end of the day. Thank you.
Any other comments? Councillor Moore.
Just one, and I'm not going to dwell on it, but I'm sure it'll all come out in the pudding, as Councillor Umstead says. My only concern is summertime on the Friday. We tend to get downpours and washouts, etc. How will it work then with calling in? Should we need to gravel a washout, etc.? That's my only, summer storms are my only concern.
Certainly, there'll be opportunities to bring staff in if necessary, and we would track the impacts on that on the budget. I don't anticipate that additional cost will position us to be in a deficit as it pertains to salary at the end of the year. So there is some gaps there. So we'll track it, and there'll be available staff. Maybe if you wish to speak, Manager Cleroux, feel free.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and additionally, if it's flex time, so if on week 1 of the pay period, for example, if we had to bring staff in, for example, on a Friday, potentially we can flex the hours in the following week to make sure that there's limited overtime costs.
Okay, thank you.
No other questions or comments? I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is notices of motion. Looking around the room, is there any notices of motion that would be like to be put forth today? And none seen. Move on to correspondence. Note that there is no correspondence for us to receive today's agenda. And we'll move on to announcements. Deputy Mayor, you're up first.
Just wanted to highlight that the Beachburg Fair is coming up. It is a 4-day fair this year, beginning on the Thursday evening. And so lots of fun and lots of excitement for the kids this time of year, and looking forward to it. And I just do want to just say we will be, as a council, we will be manning the fair booth, the BAS agricultural booth, on this Saturday evening from 6 o'clock till 10 o'clock. This has been done since the amalgamation of, I think, 2012 or 2010. I'm sorry, 2021. So we've been doing this all along, and I think it's just a great community builder, and we're looking forward to doing it, and hope everyone has a great time there. Thank you.
Councillor Bell.
Nothing from me today.
Councillor Tabbert.
Toward Whitewater is July 15th, so start registering now because we need the cyclists. I think we're up to about 200 right now. So, and our goal is 500, and usually between 100 and 200 sign up in the last week. So if we can get some more, that would be great. And Foresters Falls is having Canada Day this year on July 1st. Just so you know, the parade is at 3 o'clock and fireworks if we get some rain.
Thank you. Councillor Olmsted.
I have absolutely nothing. Thank you.
Good. Councillor Mort.
Few things. I did attend an airport commission meeting and searching more ideas of monies coming in for new pavement and new lighting. Apparently now the lighting has to be redone. On the 24th of June, I will be attending ribbon cutting at Gange Hardware in Beachburg. Did I say that right? Gagne? Okay, sorry. Gagne Hardware, formerly Lumax Hardware. They're having their ribbon cutting Saturday morning on the 24th. And on June 25th, the Historical Society is having an appraisal day. So if you need some of your antiques appraised, give them a call. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. And Councillor Trim.
Mr. Mayor, Canada Day also, Westmeath, half chicken barbecue, and other events that you can see online. And then there's something that I don't know how to confirm this yet. Something interesting happening in Beachburg on Saturday the 22nd. A qualifying arm wrestling tournament for an international competition. Now the reason I got is there such a thing? I don't know where it would be, but I heard that this is happening in Beachburg. So the reason I know it is because my grandson is into this. And so he's got a tournament in Beachburg.
If you figure out what it is, let us know.
I don't know where it is. I'm going to go as soon as I find out. I don't know where it is.
Who's your grandson? Tell me who your grandson is.
Oh,
22nd.
Kevin, my Kevin's son.
So I have to I'm just watching the time because we have 2 minutes left. So I apologize to interrupt, but if you can find out some details and share them, I'm sure that we can.
I don't know the details. I got a call from my son. And
that's perfect.
Anyway.
And that's all?
That's it.
Perfect. I'll just add one more Canada Day celebration, which is, so we got Foresters Falls, we got Westmeath, and we have the Legion here in Cobden. Yeah. I think it's 11 to 5. That's usually what happens. 11 to 5, just here at the Legion. So, and I think the staff have got it summarized on Facebook somehow, so check that out to get the details. Good. So we'll move on to item number 14, which is our bylaws. Our recommendation is be it resolved that the bylaws listed on the June 21st agenda, 6 of them, be taken as read and passed. Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Bell. Any comments or questions about those items?
Point of order.
Point
you
of order.
said 6, there's only 5 listed. Is there
I was taking the confirmatory.
No, I don't. I only got 5. Disregard, I got a non-updated sheet.
Perfect. So, thank you. Withdrawn. Is there any other comments or questions on the motion? None seen. We'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Motion is carried. There is no closed session today, and we officially adjourn at 8:14 p.m. Thank you.